Friends, if you're looking for real old school laughs, you're in for a treat because we've got them right here. Flip City Magazine. Remember Mad Magazine? Then it went woke? Well, don't worry. Flip City has no chance of going woke. That's right. 4 times a year, you'll get an actual printed magazine full of jokes, stories, comics, and more, all about today's pop culture, entertainment, and woke politics. Flip City takes terrible entertainment trends we love to hate with hilarious parodies of Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, The Walking Dead, Star Trek, Hunters, and more. Trust me when I say there is nothing else like Flip City on the market. So subscribe today. It will be delivered in print, or you can even get it digitally if you're one of those wacky Zoomers. Either way, follow our link and sign up today, and if you put in midnight, you get an extra 10% off. Check out Flip City Magazine today. Everybody, and welcome to Midnight's Edge in the Morning. I am Tom Connors. We have the boss man Andre with us. How you doing?
Greetings. I am back. It's been
Welcome
a
back.
very intense few days. A little bit out of touch, still catching up with everything that's happened in my absence, but glad to be back again and here in this awesome company.
Indeed. We have a couple of guests joining us this morning. In fact, our other guests will be with us momentarily. But we also have with us Mr. WDW Pro. How you doing?
I'm having a fantastic day, happier than I would be if I were not on Midnight's Edge.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And
I like turtles.
That's just for
you. Gotta love those reptiles.
Yes, we also have joining us our regulars, Culture Casino.
Hello.
And Paul Chato. In his Mr. Rogers sweater, as usual.
Yes, okay. and I've decided to eat Portuguese sardines for lunch because it's quieter. Like if I've eaten other foods while, on Midnight's Edge, and they've been noisy, and I went, wait a second, if I eat sardines, you can't hear it. It's less noise.
Well, it beats it beats the al dente broccoli covered in Cheetos that you usually do.
I don't eat. I eat
never.
properly.
He would never do that. That's too processed,
no.
Or as he would say, processed.
Processed. No seed oils for me. This is Portuguese sardines and tomato sauce. It's very nice. And
folks, you only wish that Midnight's Edge had smell-o-vision on right now.
Oh yes.
No, I'm glad we don't. And also joining us hopefully shortly here, we have Andrew of Legal Mindset making a comeback. It's been a while since he's joined us.
I haven't talked with him.
Glad to have him joining us too as soon as he makes it here. But while we're waiting for him, let's see what you guys are talking about out in the chat. We got Corbin Dallas, who's been a member for 6 months. Thank you for that, Corbin. And then we've got Dr. Long Dongler, who sends a £1.99 super sticker here. Thank you for that. Hit that thumbs up. That's what he's reminding us to do. Hopefully with that thumb anyway. That's all we'll allow him to do with that thumb around here. ActionCom wants to know, Script is not going to be here this morning, at least maybe later. I don't know. Says, does Sorkin have the clout to make his Social Network sequel? What he's asking about here, though, is a good question. Do you guys hear about this?
No.
Okay. At first, I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting idea until I found out what he was going to be doing. So, Culture, I know you kind of had a bit more of a emotional reaction to this than I did. Do you want to tell the folks what's going on with the Social Network dose?
Well, I mean, again, for whatever reason, Sorkin is obviously clearly suffering from TDS. He's one of the best dialogue writers that we have. He falls on the extreme left. On the extreme, or he didn't used to. He used to just be a regular, classical liberal. But he falls on the extreme side of the equation, whereas David Mamet, falls on the anti-woke.
Casino, are you Culture? Are you saying that this is going to be a Truth Social sequel? Is that where this is going?
Well, I mean, he's basically looking to blame Facebook for the activities that happened in that one day in January.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, at least that's what the inspiration is for this. So
I'm sitting here thinking, oh, this is going to be about all the court cases and shit after the movie that we saw. No, it's going to be about January 6th.
Yeah, and so
Zuckerberg was part of the riots.
Well, no, he allowed for them.
I know. It's just funny. Poor Zuck. He can't win. Zuckerberg cannot win. It's so funny. He did everything in his power to make friends with that side, and they hate him ever more.
Yeah. He should drink his sorrows away with some water. That will make everything better.
Right?
Robot manner.
So anybody have any reaction to this possible Social Network sequel that at first I was like, oh, interesting, and now I'm like, oh.
Well, given that Sorkin is a known sufferer of TDS, probably better for everyone if this movie doesn't get made, because no good can come from it. Because it's going to backfire, it's going to be ratioed to high heavens, and it's going to be a cultural war centerpiece that the studio will be better off not making, because no one is going to flock to it. If that's the point of view, it's just going to be hated and ignored.
There you go.
So he wants to concentrate on Meta's influence on January 6th.
Yeah, probably a pro-censorship movie.
Like.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Well, I think it'll have broad market appeal, frankly. I mean, I just can't tell you how many people in the mainstream are going to be excited about that one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
No broads are going to want to watch this.
Like any subject, it's a choice, right? And then you find out whether there's an audience for it.
Yeah, but sometimes studios need to understand that they also have a choice in what to emphasize, and sometimes they need to assess qualitative matters in addition to quantitative. And you can look at quantitative matters and read from a spreadsheet that, this is going to do well based on so and so metric. But then it's the qualitative side of things, which says that with this writer and this writer's attitude and the story they appear to be going with, the majority of the people, not just in the country, but against the world, are going to be dead set against this movie. Can't read that from a quantitative spreadsheet, but anyone with any kind of understanding of where society is right now would be able to figure that out and maybe give this movie the pass it so richly deserves.
Well, what's sad is it actually is one of those rare cases where I'm like, okay, I can understand making a sequel because a lot happened after what we saw in the first movie, right? But why concentrate on this? But we know why, the answer, obviously. But I'm just, to me, it's just, it's a stupid move. And I think you're going to cut what potential audience you had in half. And it's sad because, I agree with culture. Sorkin's a great writer. So, like, it sucks.
Yep.
But that being said, let's move on here. We've got more stuff to talk about. Did anybody see the Knuckles show yet? I have not. I wonder if anybody on the panel has. It was pretty fun in Patrick Robinson's opinion.
I didn't even know it was out.
So I was told that I have to watch it. Apparently, it's part of my job. I'm supposed to watch this, so I'm aware of it. They say it's really good. Jonas has watched it. He was watching it for the purposes of seeing if there's anything in there that's unworthy of being in a children's show. That's sort of his thing that he does. And he came away saying, wow, Paramount's in a bad place, but this works out pretty well for Paramount. Now, is this an Amazon Prime or is this a Netflix? Do you guys know?
I think it's Paramount Plus, isn't it?
It's Paramount Plus, then it's a winner for Paramount, and they need all the winners they can get.
That they can. Well, I'm glad to hear that he's happy with it.
So it's really good.
Yeah, like the whole season is out, and it's only been out for a few days here. So they need the win. Well, of course, if it's a win, it's kind of too late in many ways. But, but
go Sonic, go Mario, right? We want those franchises to do well because they're not part of whatever it is that Disney's doing.
I mean, Lord knows we need an alternative.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fans for Sonic. If there's stuff that I get asked the most about, it's probably Sonic. And I'm not even that big of a fan of it. So,
That's fantastic. Good news.
Yeah, and then Angela Richter sends in a 7-month member chat and says, "Glad to see all of you." Well, we're glad to have you in the chat, Angela. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for
I'd
being
love
here.
to see a Sorkin Sonic. Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah,
Just
that would be
no
interesting.
action, dialogue, just wall to wall dialogue, dense dialogue.
And there's no need to bring in any big orange man bad in there, so probably he can do it okay.
Actually, that you know what? That
12
would be
angry hedgehogs.
It would
Well,
be
you
a
got
funny
Jim Carrey, so
sketch.
it's plausible.
You know, Jim Carrey and his doctor. What was his name?
Dr. Robotnik.
Robotnik, and he's going through a page of dialogue instead of just quick bursts of rhetorical speech. It's just this gigantic. That'd be so funny. Anyways,
It's just
funny.
My dinner with Sonic.
Yeah, my dinner with Sonic. That I'm all there.
Well, and again, I mean, maybe I should reflect on my position about Sorkin, because I think he may have led to this talking in hallways, talking around tables kind of thing. Maybe he was the reason that dialogue got shoved front and center into every single show.
Him and a few other guys. I mean, look, if you're a good dialogue writer, I will listen to you wax all day about anything. Like Tarantino is a great example of somebody who can write dialogue, obviously. Right. And there's others out there. And if you can do that, if you can impress me in that way, because movie is show don't tell, right? But if you can give me a movie like 12 Angry Men where the whole entire movie is just a bunch of guys talking around a table and I am enthralled for 2 hours, then you've done your fucking job, right? Because the most boring idea I can think of is just people sitting there talking. But that movie is the perfect example I will tell somebody to go to for dialogue. Because even though I can't throw out a major line from the movie, the dialogue is so, there on point that you're watching and you're sucked in through the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Glenn Ross is another one.
Another great example. Yeah.
That's Mammoth. Yeah. And again, this is why I always look up to these men, because they write dense dialogue. It's engrossing. It's it pulls you in. Anyway, go ahead, Pro.
Anyway, yeah.
Moneyball might be one of the greatest baseball movies ever made, too. And it has very little baseball in it, so that tells you.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's very exciting considering there's not much action.
I was completely enthralled by the Wall Street movie. I'm trying to think of it. It had Ryan Gosling in it.
Not Leonardo DiCaprio.
Are you thinking of Wolf of Wall Street with Leo?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's the one, the crash, and the people who caught the big real estate crash.
Is that the big score or the big?
Yes,
something like that. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That to me was
Big Short.
Big Short.
Yeah, the audience got it. So
yeah. And that was just wall to wall talk, and that was one of the best movies I can recall seeing over the last little while.
We have our other guest joining us now, Andrew of Legal Mindset. Welcome back.
Not Bigly Short. What's going on, guys?
No, I'm
Speaking
sure
of
you're
nothing
not
but
short.
talk.
Yeah.
How's it going?
How you doing?
Hello.
Man?
I'm doing good. I'm back in Thailand, so I'm having a good time and just glad to be joining you guys.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, it's been too long.
Yeah.
So we got you here today to talk about a few legal issues going on, along with other stuff. So before we get too deep into any more super chats here, let's get started on some news. Where do we want to begin, Andre?
Well, how long do we have Legal Mindset for?
I'll stay for another 2 hours. Is fine.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll start with some other stuff before we get to the Weinstein business.
Exactly, since we have you for a little bit longer than some of the other panelists. Let's begin very briefly with the weekend box office and a certain movie that was heavily promoted for needing intimacy coordinators because it was going to be that sexy and that daring. Let's see how it fared. Cultured, you've got the numbers.
Well, yes, I'm a little slow on getting that.
Not only that, he also actually saw the movie.
Yeah, I suffered this so no one would have to. And it look, if you were going to see this, I saw a movie so you don't have to. You really did suffer a film. Here they are. The biggest problem I see with this film is that it delivered on none of its promises of the trailer.
You better tell what the movie is, Culture. We haven't named it yet.
Oh,
Yeah, what's
Challengers.
the name of
There
that?
It's
we
a
go.
challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to actually say the name. Oh, and it's an Amazon Studios one, so they don't care
Yeah.
if it makes any money.
Yeah, Amazon MGM. And so, yeah, this in the domestic box office drew in $15 million on a $55 million budget. It pulled in an additional 10 million in international markets. It does have about 10 more international markets to open up into, but I don't think this is going to have a huge draw for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, it's a bait and switch. And at $15 million, there wasn't a lot of competition because that's not a very bigly number, as Legal Mindset might say.
Big
But yeah,
Indeed.
it is. It's a very small box office number. In fact, the overall box office is the thing I would rather point out. It's $63 million, just shy
another
of
horrible
64.
weekend.
Yeah. It is not doing well. And so
I don't see how theater owners are going to make it. I really don't, guys. I think theaters are going down in the next 2 years.
They're counting down till Deadpool at this point. They're just like, come on, July.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, right? I think that all the money up front for challengers is all the money it's going to really get. This is going to drop by at least 50%, which means its second week will be in the same range as Godzilla X Kong is after 5 weekends in the box office. So and then after that, it'll fall down to $2 or $3 million, and this thing won't get to where it needs to be profitable. This will be another failure. And as I will say, and I actually used you as Paul as a point on the video I dropped this morning in my premiere, that Zendaya can't open a movie.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, Culture. How much does this damage Zendaya, potato in terms of her perceived star power? Like, is this looks to me, that's the big story here, I think. This really damages her, I think, as an actress.
I don't know about that.
Well, explain why, Tom.
Because it's a movie, and here's why I say that. Because it's not a superhero movie, because it's not Dune, because it's not some IP, and she is the only thing selling it. The fact that it opened with $15 million, she's got potential.
Tom, was she the weakest part of Dune 2?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But the fact that there's nothing else.
I rest my case, Your Honor.
It doesn't matter, though, because the fact that she's the only thing this movie has and it still managed to muster $15 million, she's not out of the race yet.
Okay.
Because this is the kind of movie, though, regardless of what you felt about it, Culture, this is the kind of movie that we've been bitching about that Hollywood does not make anymore. This is a $55 million mid-budget movie banking on its star.
Tom, replace her with Sydney Sweeney. What happens?
It goes up about $10 million easy.
Yeah.
So are we sure about that? Sorry, can I
Yeah.
just bring in a comp from last year? Last year, you know what movie we had then, which also promoted it from being sexy and stuff like that? No Hard Feelings.
That's true.
Of course, that one actually delivered on its promise. And you know what it opened to? 15 million.
Yep.
Literally almost exactly the same kind of box office as this one. I think that for this kind of movie, that kind of like may be the ceiling. And
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
I don't think that this is going to affect her star power one way or another any more than Jennifer Lawrence's star power was affected by last year's No Hard Feelings, or maybe it did. Have we
Wait a
seen
minute.
any movie since?
I think Jennifer Lawrence, J-Law, I think she actually harmed her bankability by doing that film and having it so poorly marketed and having a very bad ending. I think that there's a difference too. That was a comedy, and this is supposed to be a frenetic, sexy, raunchy, tennis romp, and it was none of those things. It's
finally a genre that needed some attention, by the way. Sexy, raunchy tennis romps.
But
Enough of those.
But I don't think they can do, and I don't think Hollywood can do like a sexy movie without trying to inject some sort of messaging or other bullshit. Like, I just don't think they can do that anymore. I don't think they're capable of doing that.
No, I think you're right, Andrew. And I'm not trying to say that this is a good thing.
Like
I'm not
for
saying the
example,
movie is
Girl
good.
Next Door, something like Girl Next Door, right? I don't think they can like remake that sort of movie in.
Well, we'll find out. I think they're supposed to be doing another American Pie movie, so we'll see how that goes.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'll believe it when I see it.
Hey, okay, so
Yeah.
let's put this into contrast, right? An animated film, Kung Fu Panda, Kung Fu Panda, Kung Fu Panda 4, is boosted. It's 8 weeks into it's 8 weekends into release, and it's still pulling in $3.5 million.
Well, and didn't that do better than the last one or two Kung Fu Panda movies?
Global box office is over 500 million on this.
Well,
movie.
and I think what helped with that was that single. Jack Black hit me one more time really helped.
You're right, but it didn't hurt. But again, that's a marketing ploy, right? They're
it's all
marketing.
good for them. Yeah,
yeah, they're marketing.
Well, the one that stands out to me, Culture, is Unsung Hero, and that's one Holly's been pushing quite a bit, and that came in second place this weekend. So
yeah, but half the number of this Amazon thing, and I'll push on this and say that the marketing for the non-sexy tennis waste of time at 2 hours and 12 minutes, I'd say the marketing is what got it to that 15 million. It was this. Look, there are 2 terrible movies this year. One of them was Madam Web, and this is the other one. This one is worse. This is worse than Madam Web.
I'll just say, like, I haven't seen anything for this thing. I didn't even know this existed until you brought this up. I'm being serious, and I just checked. It's out in Thailand, so it's not like it's not available in the country I'm at right now.
No, actually, I checked here locally. It's available here in Tenerife as well, with an English dub even. You know how rarely that happens?
Wow.
Yeah.
If only it was done in English to begin with, that would have been easier.
Now that's funny.
And not to shift too far, but another one that stands out to me is Alien. Came in technically at 10th place. I think it fell a little bit because they're not getting. Are these the updated numbers, Culture? Or are they still updated?
This is this morning.
So, okay, so because I did hear it came in at 10th, but now it's sharing 10th place with Boy Kills World, Monkey Man, and a bunch of other movies there. It looks like for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell it's still the studio estimates because we've got
and the Mummy
and the
Mummy is the other one that stands out there too, because you got 2 movies that were re-released and they were just in really small Fathom event kind of things.
Yeah, and we almost never see the actual finals until tomorrow, but it's just and that's normal. But these are close enough. The estimates usually come in within a reasonable range, so I don't freak out about it. But I just looking at these numbers, I feel like that, when you get all these re-releases that are doing so well, like The Mummy, I mean, that was in 1,236 theaters that earned $1 million after how many years? That thing's been out, what?
That means almost
now?
every showing was probably packed.
Yeah. And it just
same thing with Alien, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have a return of entertainment. Look at Dune. Okay, Dune Part 2 is still in theaters 9 weekends in.
Yeah.
And it's on video on demand already too. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere. It's only in 1,300 theaters, and it rocked $2 million. See, there's nobody can convince me that what we have in theaters now compared to what we were producing before. And you can point towards the strikes, certainly, but at the same time, you have a lot of these movies that were sitting on shelves for a long period of time before they got released, and there's zero reason why. There isn't better competition. There was no competition this weekend. That's how Challengers ended up at the top of the thing. Release, if you release Civil War at the same time as Challengers, it loses to Civil War. If Abigail deserves to be much higher than it was in its second week, but the competition's weak and nobody's going to the theaters and exhibitors are hurting. On a $55 million budget, this film won't be profitable. Because if you take marketing, ads and print out of the equation for Challengers, it has to make $110 million to break even to its budget. Zendaya got a $10 million payday.
What marketing? I saw nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. And I don't think Amazon really cares.
Yeah, I saw tons of marketing.
That's the other part.
I saw marketing on YouTube.
Because all this is basically just free, like not free advertising, but it's advertising for the movie. At least I'll give Amazon credit. At least they put these movies out in theaters, unlike most of Netflix and Apple's stuff. They don't.
Right. I think you're right.
I mean, look, and you're right. It probably won't make its money back in theaters, but again, my point is this is the kind of movie previous to streaming that would have done okay in theaters,
right?
Not made its money back, but would have definitely made its money back on home video. And now it won't because it's going to go straight to Amazon. But to them, it's just a loss leader for, Amazon Prime. But, at the end of the day, the box office is dismal, I think is the bigger point. You're right about that. Culture. That's 2 weeks in a row, or at least 2 or 3 weeks in a row now. It's been pretty piss poor.
Yeah. And it's not going to get better. I mean, the doldrums of Hollywood, and mind you, this goes back many years now, and I'll run this by Chato and other people who are informed, like Pro, and obviously Andre and Tom. I'll say, wasn't the slow month supposed to be January and the beginning of February?
Yeah.
That wasn't the before times.
The before times. But I think we're getting back to those times, Culture. It's a good point, because the reason those times were falsely propped up is because they were dropping a bunch of superhero movies in those slots. So like they were like, well, we keep launching these superhero movies any time of the year, they're going to play, right? So that's what they kept thinking. But yeah, now we've reached a point where people don't go to the movies anymore like they used to.
Well, one final question, Pro, and then I want you to get to whatever you were just about to say. Disney's still under 2% of the total box office for
Culture.
the year,
How did you do that? That's exactly what I was. How did you do that? So consider this, okay? Back in 2019, Disney had more than $11 billion in box office revenue.
Yep.
In this year, with the box office this low, Disney proper, so not including the aspects of like 20th Century that Disney purchased, but just Disney proper, so that we have an apples to apples comparison. Disney currently has a 0.37% market share of the box office. Now that will change when Inside Out 2 comes out, but that's where we are today. And so that shows you exactly what is happening with the box office and with theater owners. One of the companies, the biggest company that was in the box office by far, has utterly abdicated its ability to generate revenue. And there's no guarantee that Inside Out 2 is going to shift that trajectory, especially if parents say, hey, you made this little personification of anxiety into a likable character. I don't want my 3-year-old to go around saying, anxiety. We're out. We're not doing that. And so that, what a strange decision by Disney.
Very
well.
And speaking of decisions by Disney,
I was just going to say, I think you're segueing into Mufasa, right, Andre?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because WDW Pro, you had a very interesting story a couple of weeks back about Disney's master plan, or Iger and his team's master plan to get back on track after all of the streaming disasters, and how they're basically shutting down Hulu, the one profitable streaming service under their control, incorporating it into their money loser Disney Plus. It's all going to be fine because they have 4 movies that they need to be billion-dollar hits this year. So this is their plan. Hope to hell, and pray to whoever will listen that these 4 movies are going to be billion-dollar hits because they're Disney. So how can they not be? And one of them is Mufasa. And the trailer for Mufasa dropped today. What's the early response on this trailer, and what does that like? It's early days, of course, but if we were to make any kind of guesses on what the response says about the box office, what would you say about the enemy of this WDW Pro?
So this one actually takes me by surprise, and I've come to recognize that Disney has put itself into a position where they are no longer easily accepted by the mainstream society. Now, they have their vociferous supporters, of course, and I've faced off with them on Twitter over the last 72 hours, real or unreal. But Mufasa has released today, and as you said, we're very early on. That's actually bad for Disney, because what's happening here is something unforeseen by me, and that is that on their official trailer right now, with 360,000 views as of just a few moments ago, if you have the Chrome extension enabled where you can see dislikes, Disney is currently at 34,000 likes and 26,000 dislikes.
Ooh.
And those dislikes are rapidly catching up with the likes. Now, the reason that this is strange is because there's nothing at all that is woke in this trailer. There's nothing that's divisive. There's nothing that's strange in this trailer. It's just CGI animated lions running around with the callback to the original soundtrack. Yet it's on its way to perhaps a ratio. And so what that means is, to me, either there's some sort of crazy Lion King conspiracy in the Lion King fandom that I didn't know really even existed, and there's a backlash that I don't understand. Possible, but probably not. What it probably means instead is that Disney right now has a baked-in dislike factor, and that when they put stuff out, they're going to get a huge amount of dislikes from society. That's really problematic for Disney, because in order to get those billion-dollar films, which is what you were talking about, Disney, and I'll real quick to explain the $4 billion, why they need it. Going back to 2019, as culture segued in for me, 2019, Disney had $11 billion plus in revenue off the box office. Disney also has spent tremendously on streaming, and streaming isn't succeeding, right? That's why they're integrating Hulu into Disney Plus and cannibalizing it, because streaming isn't working for Disney. They're losing market share. I think they're at 1.7% of all streaming right now on Disney Plus. That's a drop of 0.2% in the last year, while other platforms like YouTube and Netflix are taking off. So in order to reassure investors this year and potentially stop another proxy war with Nelson Peltz, in order to reassure those investors, Disney needs to get back in the box office and show, hey, we can be respectable. So they've only got really 4 Disney proper movies, right? We could talk about Planet of the Apes, but the Disney propers we have still remaining: Inside Out 2, we have Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, and Mufasa. Now, if Disney fails to reach the 4 billion mark again, because they've been in the 3 billion territory since the pandemic, but if they fail to reach at least 4 billion, then what that's going to say to investors look at headlines. It's going to say that Disney is not recovering back to those pre-pandemic box office levels. And when you couple that with the streaming failures, you've got a real problem on your hands. With this dislike number that's coming in now on this property, I worry that Disney's brand damage is being sustained across, this next year with families. We'll have to wait and see if this translates. But right now, that's a really bad look to have this sort of a negative reaction.
I have one question about this, because I spoke with someone who is connected to Disney. And according to this someone, internally in Disney, they have great faith in Mufasa. They think the audience is going to love it and that they have a winner on their hands. If this movie doesn't do that, what's the reaction to that going to be? Will they know that they are seriously out of tune? And what can they do about that? What does that say about the rest of things going forward?
So my guess would be that Moana 2 is likely to overshadow whatever happens with Mufasa, unless China explodes with Mufasa. And that's probably why they have great faith, because the original CGI, not the original animated, but the original CGI Lion King did exceptionally well in China. It was something that China really hadn't seen before, and they weren't familiar with the Lion King, and so it just exploded. And so if they can replicate that in China, they'll have a big number for the headlines. They won't have a big number for the bank accounts, because China's only going to send something like 15 to 18% of all of that revenue back to Disney after all of the money is taken.
Movie, by the way.
Yes, and this is no longer a Favreau movie. This is by, I think, Barry Jenkins is the person who's over this one. So Moana 2 likely to overshadow it either way. They'll bank on China. But I think that Disney has bigger worries right now. They may not have been worried about Mufasa up until about 4 hours ago. Now they have reason to worry. But Inside Out 2, I think, is going to be the canary in the coal mine. If that movie fails to break $1 billion after the original tickled $1 billion, and now we've got inflation, and that I think the original came out in like 2013, 2014. Somebody out there can correct me on that one. But if Inside Out, the original, if
something like that, yeah,
comes in at like 500, 600 million, which would be essentially the audience has been halved yet again, then they will already know that they're in a critically dangerous point, and then they better hit a grand slam with Moana.
To say nothing of Deadpool, but yeah, carry on, culture.
No, I want to add to what Pro's saying. I want his reaction and probably legal mindsets as well, because Asia-based lawyers going to understand this. China's economy is dog doo-doo. And on top of that, their box office was equally as weak to the U.S. box office this last weekend. So I don't have high hopes for Mufasa in China. I could be wrong. I mean, they went gaga over the first one, but if you turn the volume off on the trailer, that's how I watch trailers, folks. I watch the trailer with the sound on, and I watch it with the sound off. And in this moment, the only thing that they're selling you is the music in this trailer, because otherwise you feel nothing watching the visuals. Nada.
Well, and I think that the shine has wore off these live action remakes, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look at the box office on them, what's the last one they had that was a hit? I'm trying to think.
Aladdin. Aladdin is
I was
the
just
last
going to
one.
say that. I think it was Aladdin, and that was while this was still new and shiny, right? We got to remember, and that wore off pretty dang quick. And they started dropping shit like Lady and the Tramp and Pinocchio on Disney Plus, and a few of these.
Yeah,
other
that
ones
ruined them, because then it was.
Yeah.
Then usually I do not buy the excuse that they have given for Marvel and for Star Wars movies, that the audience has been trained like Pavlov's dogs, that Disney stuff is something you go and see on Disney Plus. But I'm willing to make an exception for the live action remakes by putting so many of them straight to Disney Plus. I think that they equated them with the direct to video sequels from the late 90s, early 2000s. It's just something that kind of drops. It's just content. No,
and Disney might argue The Little Mermaid was successful in the US, but I would still say that it only did half of what the other ones did prior to that.
And nobody and internationally, The Little Mermaid is a joke.
Yeah,
I was
it was a
actually
bomb.
talking with it's Golden Week here, which is the week off. It's Golden Week in Japan, which is when all the Japanese go on vacation. So I was in the Philippines before, and I'm in Thailand now, so there's a lot of Japanese people on vacation. And I actually stumbled across while I was out drinking one night, a group of executives. I was talking with them, and we were joking about The Little Mermaid, and we're like, they remade this movie, and they're like, oh, what movie? And they don't even acknowledge that as a remake, right? They don't even give this credence. It's just something totally other that they don't acknowledge, right? Because it's so far afield from the original. And to what Culture was saying earlier about China, that's actually something that is very real about the economic pressures and climate in China. It's not as great and rosy as a lot of people try to paint it out to be, and certainly it's not worth jumping through all the hoops to increasing hoops, because the hoops have gotten larger and more expensive to get something into that market. It's becoming harder and harder, and the payoff is less and less and less. So it's a diminishing return. Maybe if you could sell it to me 10 years ago or something like that, but at this point, 2024, it's just not worth it.
And I think you're right, Andre. Like, sure, even though The Lion King made a billion and Aladdin made $1 billion, I think they're working on a sequel for Aladdin as well. I think that we'll learn with these sequels is that people aren't as enthralled with these as Disney thought they were, right? Because The Lion King was kind of an exception. You looked at it and people are like, "Oh, that looks neat. I want to see that." Like, because everybody's always like, "Oh, it'd be really cool if they did like a live action version of this cartoon or that cartoon." And then when they saw it, the one thing I noticed most people said about it was that how emotionless it was. It's like, well, what did you expect? Right? Like, I mean, real animals don't emote like humans do on their faces, right? Yeah. That's just the way it works. And did you think that, Jon Favreau was sitting there directing real lions or something? Like, that's what I also hate about it, is that people call them live action to begin with. Because that one, like, literally nothing is live action on the screen. Like, at least with his Jungle Book movie, he had the Mowgli kid, on green screen doing this, that, and the other, and a few other things. This movie, he wasn't even sitting there with, a piece of steak going, "Hey, lion, act, lion, act." He was just sitting there telling the animators what to do. So,
and one more thing, because it was mentioned earlier that that movie had a novelty to it, because the Chinese weren't familiar with the original, and they weren't familiar with that kind of animation. So it had kind of like, it was just the right movie for China. Now they've seen it before, both of them. They just got their direct-to-video sequel. They just got their direct-to-video Lion King 2. How well did the Lion King do in the US with theaters? Oh, that's right. It went straight to video.
Yeah.
I think that's what the reaction for this movie is going to be, which is going to make Deadpool all the more important if we step outside of animation and just look at Disney as a whole for a moment. And one of the things that we have been saying is that a possible challenge for Deadpool is that it's going to be very, very research heavy. Like, it assumes that you have seen all of the X-Men movies, because this continues the Fox X-verse, but it also brings in the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, from the Loki series.
Now I'm told I don't have to do homework.
Yeah, this is kind of
that's
the thing. But
that's the
against
thing,
this,
though, right? It's required now for all Marvel-related stuff.
The TVA can easily be dispensed with by just telling the audience that this is a time-shifting government organization. That's it. You're done. It could be completely fresh to a new viewer.
But
then you wasted everyone who watched Loki. Then wasted their time.
I was just going to say,
Yeah. But
that's the problem
what
I
they
have
to do
because
in this movie, they've got no choice.
In my head canon, everything stops pretty much at Endgame, and then you add on Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as a 0.0 kind of thing to it, you know, and Spider-Man and stuff like that. Because otherwise, the rest of the stuff in my head canon doesn't even happen anymore. Because I'm sick of all the garbage, and I watched one episode of Loki, and you know when I checked out, and it had everything to do with the time shit, because they treated the Infinity Stones like they were nothing. Sure, they may be nothing in their timeline, but they're not in some other timeline that somebody else might be in, to where, you know, even Loki is smart enough to go, you know what, I'll grab those because they might come in handy somewhere.
But the Infinity Stones were not greater than John Major's character. He was better than any of the Infinity Stones.
Which is another mistake, in my opinion, because then to me, it's like
that killed it.
It's like sucking in on itself like a you know, a black hole at this point.
But we don't know the story of Mufasa.
No,
and I'm predicting what's happening is going to happen. This is my prediction. The story is going to be he's going to be captured by Siegfried and Roy, and then he's going to kill them. That's my thought.
I would watch
be castrated.
I would watch that. I would 100% watch that.
Totally, I'd be there with you, Andrew.
Be castrated on Pride Rock.
I would definitely watch that.
I would watch that Mufasa movie. I mean, Chato at Disney must be beating themselves in the head right now for not thinking of that, because that's how you do it.
But Scar is the real father of Simba. That's what we're going to find out. Here
we have.
He is the Scar giver. There we go.
Yeah.
It all comes together.
We have a story from the Hollywood Reporter. With Deadpool and Wolverine director Sean Levy says film requires no prior research of Marvel Cinematic
Do you think
Universe.
he's listening to us, Andre? Not us specifically, but people saying the same kind of shit that we are.
But I do believe there must be definitely listening to something, and the byline reads, I'm definitely not looking to do homework when I go to the movies. The director says of his aim to make a movie that MCU newcomers will enjoy as much as passionate fans. Now, this, of course, is a noble goal. But I have to say that, to me, putting out this big headline, this is something that's planted, and it smells a little bit of desperation from the studio, because it tells me, because this story doesn't come on its own. There's nothing organic about it.
Yeah, and why are they even worried about it? Exactly.
Yeah. What are they worried about, WDW Pro? What's your reading on why this story exists?
Well, it exists, I think, because they realize that people have stopped paying attention to how all of these stories work, right? So phase 4 led into the phase 5 dive, and phase 6 is going to be sick. That's the problem they have.
Yeah.
They don't even know what's happening because, as Paul correctly pointed out, they made Jonathan Majors, his character, be bigger than anything we'd ever seen before, and he's gone. They had to exit him, and there was no giant grand finale. So everything is just thrown
Honestly, he
away.
probably did them a favor in that respect because this
Probably so, to end this, put it out of its misery. Yeah. So that's what this is about. They want you to know that if you are sick of the garbage, that this is going to be separate from the garbage. That you can get. They're trying to tell you this is its own thing. Come and enjoy it. It's the Joker, right? This is its own Ryan Reynolds. You remember Ryan Reynolds? You love Ryan Reynolds. You've seen these movies. You love him.
Yeah.
It's not connected with any of the other stuff that has spoiled your love and trust of what we'll do. That's what this message is about.
I think you're right, Pro. I think that this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It is being marketed on the goodwill of both those characters who we love, and the goodwill of the actors who embody them.
Here's my question. That's the marketing, but what do you guys? I mean, what do you guys speculate is the percentage that it's actually that, not a bait and switch?
I think they're lying through their teeth with this headline.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, you almost have to because you pointed it out, Andre. Sorry, go ahead and continue. My bad. You're gonna.
No, I like there ain't. You can try to make this movie accessible to newcomers. You can really try, but here they have a balancing act. This movie right now has all of the MCU on its resting on its shoulder, or other way around. Actually, yes, the entirety of the MCU is resting on the shoulders of this one movie. This one movie, following all of the flops that have been, has to kind of like save it all and create some kind of new excitement until they can come up with a new direction, at least to give enough goodwill that they can get past the next movies coming out, which is going to ruin it anyway. And the challenge is that in order for Deadpool to work, Deadpool really only works if you have seen the prior X-Men movies, because there's so many in-jokes. I mean, just think about it. You could watch the first Deadpool movie without having seen anything before, but it really becomes fun if you have seen the earlier Deadpool movies, because that is when his fourth wall-breaking jokes work. And that's half the movie. If you haven't seen any of the earlier X-Men movies and you go straight into the first Deadpool, half of his jokes will fall flat because you don't know what they're about. And this one is going to be even more that, because now he's going to be making jokes about the past X-Men movies, about Kevin Feige, and about the MCU. I mean, that's a lot of things that's going to fall flat if you don't know about those things. And also, we know he's lying because we've seen trailers where he references all of those things. So is it just references, or is it something more substantial?
Well, put it this way: joke packing is not an unusual technique, right? And you throw a crap ton of stuff at the audience. I can't see what that is.
These are all the movies, if you don't count the Disney stuff, that you have to have seen to understand what's going on here.
No,
this is true. That's the entirety of the X-Men.
That's all.
You've seen those to have grown in love with them, not to know those individual bits. Yeah, you know what? Deadpool made fun of Marvel and DC comic characters within the comics. You kind of had to know that actually more religiously than what Deadpool has been doing in the movies, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I mean, put it this way: Shrek required an enormous amount of Disney knowledge, and to be able to really appreciate the humor.
No, I disagree. I have to disagree with that. I mean, my kids could go and watch Shrek and be fully caught up with that without having seen any Disney movies, because they would know the fairy tales that I have been told them. You don't need any Disney knowledge. You need fairy tales that I don't know how many people still know in America, but certainly in Europe, no one needs to have seen.
But Shrek made fun of the Disneyfication of those fairy tales.
If Deadpool had done what Shrek did in its trailer, I think that Deadpool would be on its way to making $1 billion, even with the R rating. And that is,
well,
that instead of joking about we can't say the C word. That's the one thing Kevin Feige told us we can't do, and all that kind of stuff. If Deadpool had come out and mocked how bad She-Hulk was, or how bad Ant-Man Quantumania was, if it had went that route, I think it would have pulled in every side of the fan base, because I think those shows and those movies lately have been universally despised.
I think that's a bit too inside baseball.
You think making fun of She-Hulk is too inside baseball?
Yes,
maybe you might have a point, right? Because so few people tuned in.
Actually, yeah, we would love it, but
we would love it.
Most people who didn't see, most people never saw She-Hulk.
Yeah, I never saw She-Hulk.
Baseball for that,
other than the clips. I mean, never watched a full episode. Yeah,
exactly.
And it it has turned out to not be the worst show of everything that Disney has done,
which is really bad.
Yes,
to say that.
Yes.
I just want to say, though, in defense of Shrek, Paul, like maybe now if Shrek came out, kids might not understand the references as much. Andre's right. Like, today's kids don't understand Disney movies or haven't seen Disney movies like we did growing up. No, this is actually in Film Threat's report, that these kids that are working there now have never seen Cinderella. They've never seen Snow White. They have never watched any of these movies because they didn't grow up with them. We have a whole generation now that, because of the destruction of home video and the advent of streaming, has not really grown up with these movies as the important things that we did, right? Because when we would hear that Pinocchio was being re-released in theaters, that was a big deal, right? One of my earliest memories of going to see a movie was Pinocchio and 101 Dalmatians.
You're absolutely right. The latest, a brand new version of Shrek would have to make fun of Logan Paul.
It would, yeah, you're right. It would have to make fun of things from the last 20 years, unfortunately.
No, last 8 minutes.
Or 8 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, that's very much right. It'd have to keep up with the
I don't think have a sense of reference with Disney. Sorry, Andrew, go on.
No. It'd have to keep up with the TikTok mentality. I mean, that's what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah.
And Shrek's coming out again. They're bringing that franchise back again, so we'll see what they do with it.
That's probably what they have to do. Yeah,
I am. It's one of the things I've ragged on about is the lack of intellectual capital of the audience. That you can't, one of the things that holds society together is an education system that basically teaches everybody the same thing, and we all hate the same thing. And at one point, we all learned Latin. Now, whether that was useful or not, I will debate it. But we could, at least when I was doing comedy, I could make fun of learning Latin in school, and I knew at least 50% of the audience would laugh at that because they all had to go through the same shit I did. Now you can't do that.
You want required She-Hulk watching. I get it. I see what you're
going. Now
we've
got videos where guys don't even understand what quarter past an hour means.
That's
I saw that.
Yeah, that's my favorite burger at McDonald's.
Oh,
the quarter past.
Royale with cheese.
That's right. So this is one of the problems with comedy, is not having similar educational frameworks to be able to laugh at something. Like, my old Brezhnev jokes, they just don't land anymore.
It's funny that people are just historyless.
They are.
Well, yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And I watched a video of a bunch of cinematographers that teach at different prestigious film schools around the United States, and they were saying that they are now guaranteed that none of the classmates, or like not none, but I mean, the vast majority of students will have not watched anything from Eisenstein, will have not watched, anything, any of the classics, nothing in black and white. They will have not known anything. They said they have never encountered this in their lives. And I think this affects entertainment in general, but that's a different topic.
So, but that's on. Well, no, I was just gonna say that's in my with what I was saying about Disney. I just don't think these kids have a frame of historical reference. No. Go ahead, Culture.
No, but the problem is, and everybody's right. I mean, you guys are all talking the right thing. I mean, again, when you are interested in film and you go to college and that's what you want to do, and you are headed towards film school as your plan, your introductory courses are starting with silent movies, black and white silent movies. They walk you through, they give you the history of everything that it took to get from there to here. And you start out watching, all of the classics from, Chaplin.
Well, you should.
I will give them credit. I do know a kid who's going through film school right now, and that's one of the first things they did is start showing him some classics and stuff like that. Now, some of the other kids are reacting differently than him, but I mean, to him, he's at least grew up around a lot more of this film stuff. So he's eating it up, right? Like it's the first time he's seen Timpopo and all this other stuff, So like that at least film school is doing that for now. but we can't say that about regular school as far as history goes.
I don't know a single Gen Z person who's watched Bicycle Thief.
You may not. I mean, like I could ask this kid and he may have now. See, because he's eating up the classic stuff like crazy. Like, but you're right. Like there is this gap.
Bicycle Thief.
Yeah.
Well, that's the difference between Gen Z, though. They're just different people, because I think that's going to be the greatest and the worst generation at all times, depending on the internal fortitude of the individual. If they're strong enough to realize that they have basically been growing up in a cult and are strong enough to break free and come out stronger on the other end, like some people that really have been cults and escape and completely thrive afterwards do. Or if they can never escape their conditioning and will be victims afterwards, which also happens to some cult escapees.
I work with a lot of folks in millennials and Gen Z, and I think one of the things I see, and obviously much maligned, but there's obviously a bifurcation, right? There's a certain percentage that are very much the way they're painted, but then there's a certain percentage that are reacting to that, right? That are saying absolutely not. We reject this, and we're actually going a different direction. So that doesn't exist.
There is many of them that study. Yeah, sorry, Andre, go ahead.
Are the ones also discovering that want to seek out much better things from the past, both music and movies, and they see it and they're blown away by how much better it is than anything today.
I think that Gen Z and maybe the generation following them, I think the big story to watch with them over the next 30 or 40 years is going to be just how much the men and women disagree within that generation.
Huge.
That's what's amazing. The men, it's a massive gulf between the genders or between the sexes, however you want to phrase it.
It'll probably be the biggest battle of the sexes since the 60s, probably.
I think it might crash the birth rate.
Though. Yeah, it's already crashed the birth rate.
Oh yeah,
because
it's going to crash it even more.
The sex rate is down, and this isn't trying to get racy. I'm just saying
you're right.
People aren't interacting.
And that's where I was getting to with that report. These kids are getting too inundated with sex, right? Like, and they're being confused. They don't even know what the difference is between a friend and a fuck friend anymore. And then in that case, they don't even understand how to have an actual relationship. So this is becoming a problem, and they're starting to reject a lot of this stuff. So I'm hopeful that the Zoomer and the Alpha generation do come around to what you guys are saying. But I know we're limited on time with Pro here, and he actually had one more story to go through before we lose him. And I know Culture is going to be leaving around the same time as well. But you had a story blow up this last week, Pro, did you not? About the evil queen over at Disney. Was it Disneyland or Disney World?
Disney World, specifically at Artist Point, which is a very high-end character dining restaurant in a hotel next to the Magic Kingdom called Wilderness Lodge. And what caught our attention, and Chato is clearly ready for this one. What hand gesture did you do to make that one happen?
I can't remember.
I don't know, but he just put us into the Matrix. That's all I know.
I wasn't expecting that, but anyway, folks. So what caught our attention was that this particular performer seemed to be clearly outside of the normal qualifications that Disney is very stringent about who will play what role. There are height requirements. There are vocalization requirements. And so we covered that topic. I did not think that it would explode, but I think that LGBTQIA plus groups out there decided to try to flood the video, especially the post on Twitter, with comments. And so overwhelmingly very, very supportive of the Queen on X. But many of those, in fact, I would say the vast majority of the replies were so strikingly similar that it makes me wonder if there's a synthetic effort to try to overwhelm and paint broadly what the Pro channel is and what that Park Place is. They were just, when you hear the same thing over and over like 1,000 times in the replies, and when you're over 5 million views, you get thousands of replies. So when you see all of these people saying, well, Tinkerbell is a man that goes down the zip line at Disney World, you're like, that's not true. That it's very untrue. And why would this huge percentage of people be saying this? It makes you wonder if they've either been told to say this or if it's an effort or what have you. But anyway, all of that is sort of part of the online drama. Go ahead.
No, and I'm saying, Pro, I don't know if you're being, coy about it or not, but I mean, we've seen it in, dealing with even during the Amber Heard trial when I was covering that, the bot farms and
yeah.
the, synthetic responses, right? They're very much a thing, and they're still a thing. They haven't gone anywhere, right? So for that to happen over this would not be surprising at all, because frankly, I think it's a big black eye if it gets
Yes.
exposed. So they've got to astroturf it.
It's dangerous to Disney. It's very dangerous to Disney. And so I'll tell you the big story today, I would say, like that news cycle has kind of gone and went, and everybody now knows, okay, well, there are dudes playing, female roles at Disney now, and not in the way that, it's not like there's some ugly guy playing a stepsister for laughs. We're supposed to take this seriously. That's the difference here. So, but that's kind of come and gone. What's happened, and we're reporting on today, we published this last night, is that women at Disney World reached out to us. Cast members at Disney World reached out to us. And this kind of mirrors what we've seen in women's sports. And it's really funny that it's working out this way. So largely, the women reaching out to us are supportive. And yet at the same time that they're supportive, they're also, quote unquote, concerned. And
we have a term for this. It's called cognitive dissonance. The difference between their virtue signaling and what they know is to be right. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
So, well, I'll just finish it out here. This is what they're concerned about. So they love that this person is getting to do this. At the same time, they want to go to HR, but they're afraid to go to HR. They say that it's not advisable to go to HR. And why do they want to go to HR? Well, because if there are a limited number of roles for taller women, so the evil queen, you must be 5'7" to 5'10" to play the evil queen. So that's taller for women. There are a limited number of these roles, and these are the primo positions that you want if you're a young woman working at Disney, because this person gets to work in air conditioning, never in hostile weather, is not in a parade with a very heated parade float. The cost of doing this for a family of four is easily over $300. So you get the affluent groups to come meet with you. Like, everything here is cushy about this job. And so what these women are saying is, okay, so I'm a 5'10" female, and I can't play Mickey Mouse because that's a shorter role. And I can't play the princesses because that's a shorter role. But I can play the evil queen, and I can play Maleficent, and I can play, and they name out, I can play Luisa from Encanto, the new strong woman character, right? I can play those characters, but there are very few of these roles. And now those are going to go to biological men, and biological men have a biological advantage in height in that they tend to be this height. That's just the height they are. And so the women are saying, well, this was my dream. I really support this person. I hope they do great. It's great they did this. They're breaking the ceiling. They're doing wonderful. But I don't have a job anymore, and I want to go to HR, but I shouldn't because I'll be thrown aside. And so that's the story today. It's a very interesting.
Yeah. That's another example of South Park being prophetic. Remember that interview where you have PC Principal, the new principal at the school, who's all about virtue signaling and political correctness, and so is his wife, who is an athlete. And then there's like this triathlon or something like that where she is honored to be competing against them. Let's put it that way. And is completely against anyone who is against this, because how dare you? This is the most important social battle of our time. And then both she and all the other female contestants are completely and utterly mauled. And then you kind of like see the cognitive dissonance going on there. That's what the people at Disney are having right now. This is their ideology and what they have been indoctrinated with, clashing with their own self-interest, and everything inside of them screaming to them, this ain't right.
Andre, I wish that South Park would do an episode. And folks, if you're listening with earbuds in, I'm going to pull back from the mic for this, but I wish South Park would do an episode where there is the cartoon evil queen, and the little South Park characters go up to her and she says, "Oh yeah, I'm the strongest evil queen there is." It would make my day.
That'd be great.
Well, I'm sure
that's
that
how
some
Betty
people
Davis
are gonna
sounded.
I'm sure some people are going to accommodate right now. So,
Well, I think Disney should come out with a sequel to Freaky Friday and call it Freaky Every Fucking Day.
Yeah.
Well, as we said, though, Gen Z might not know what that means.
That's true. Oh my God.
that has never stopped a remake before.
I got a new title for it, Paul. Get your freak on Friday. There you go.
You know what? I'm thinking of writing a stand-up parody where the audience doesn't understand a single joke at all. Like, no, seriously. they have no frame of reference based on anything that the person has.
I think it's hilarious. You should definitely do that.
That is kind of a funny idea.
You should have a janitor in the back who just starts
kind of
snickering, but he laughs harder and harder.
He's
the only
person
guy
who gets the joke.
I'll make it be a Mexican custodian in the back who's like 60 years old and should have no understanding of the jokes at all, but he's the only guy who gets it.
And it's like one set up after, toilet paper.
So basically, it'd be like if Andy Kaufman made a movie.
That's right.
So I'll tell you guys before I go.
Joke, yeah.
This is the story we're working on, and we'll see what we can do with it. But the other big story that we'll hopefully have out later this week, if we can figure out how to do it in a safe way, is we've been looking into a huge swath of these cast members, and we're never going to put somebody out there in a position where they should not be, right? A private individual who works for a company, their private lives should not be put out for the world to see. That's not okay. And we don't dox or do anything like that ever. Never, ever, ever. So we got to figure out how to do this. There's a thing happening where the Disney introduced this inclusion key. So it's a new pillar of their company, right? Inclusion. And what that seems to be allowing, according to our sources and according to what we've now seen, is that there are people who are being hired who are staying inside the company who in the past, what they have on their social media accounts, they would never stay at the company. So, and it's even hard to describe some of the stuff that is on their social media accounts, but because of inclusion, they're there. So I'll give you one example that there's an account for someone who works at Disney, and it features Disney characters, like they're making art of Disney characters in a way that the Disney company would never, ever, ever allow their characters to be presented in this way. And
not being very
Disney
inclusive,
version
bro.
of slash fiction.
Yeah.
So
Disney has become slash fiction now, dude. What are you talking about?
But and so that person, if they were just an average Joe and they were doing that, Disney would say, "You're fired. Like you're not going to do this and be part of our company." But because of the inclusion key, I think they're being given carte blanche to just do anything, and it's kind of creating this strange ecosystem of cast members who are kind of connected with one another now, who are all part of this kind of deviant way of acting privately when they're not working at the parks. Anyway.
Yeah, it's like the subculture, and they've allowed that because they cannot get rid of it. So it actually creates a home for them.
Well,
and
they're
they end
afraid
up
of
gravitating towards there. And this is also why Grady Judd keeps arresting people who are Disney cast members, the sheriff of Polk County.
I think that will go up, Andrew. That will,
yes.
From what we've seen, they're going to be busy over at the happiest
Polk
jail
County.
on earth.
Yep.
Wow, are you intimating what I think you're intimating?
I would never intimate anything, Paul Chato, of an intimate variety such as this.
Well, maybe you're incubating it.
Oh, I think they might be, but we would never. I wouldn't want to hatch what it is they're making.
Woo! He's hot today.
Man, we've got some poultry puns here, folks, but I do have to run, guys, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on. I wish your yoke is easy upon me, Paul, but I wish that I could stick around for the Weinstein conversation. I'll have to listen in instead, but I'll definitely be in the audience. So thank you, guys.
Shalom.
Gosh.
Take care.
Can't top that one. I'm out.
Culture, did you have to leave us too?
Yeah, I got to step out. I wish I could stick around because the Weinstein thing is definitely going to be fire, but I'll be listening to you guys while I wrap some stuff up. So thanks for having me as usual. Do check out today's videos. I already dropped 2 of them, had a live stream, and I even complimented Mr. Chato on one of his takes in my videos. So
I'll have
do
to
check
watch.
it out. YouTube is still
I do
screwing
watch
up.
it all the time. Just
I
this
know.
morning I was.
It's fine. It's fine. The YouTube is still screwing up creators right now. They've admitted it apparently that they screwed things up a few weeks ago. So, if you suddenly got unsubscribed,
admit any intention to unscrew things up, or was it like deal with it?
No, they're trying to unbumfuzzle it. Yeah.
So they didn't mean to. It was just like an unforeseen effect of like pressing interference or something.
What I think is they made an intentional change that had unintentional consequences.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah.
All right. See you guys later. Love you. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah, it's funny though. Right. The worst browser right now to manage YouTube is Chrome. Google's own product. I can't. It's like terrible.
Opera is fantastic for it.
Yeah, Safari. Yeah, Firefox, Safari, they all work well. Chrome is the worst.
Let's grab some super chats and
then let's grab some of them super
spicy topics.
Yeah,
we got Dragon's Blade 79, who's been a member for 11 months, who says Midnight's Edge for the win. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And then we got Dark Hero Fan, who sends in $2, says make entertainment again, not lecture-tainment. Yes.
There's lots of stuff out there coming out. The problem is a lot of it is not being particularly well marketed because no one has money to market it.
Well, yeah. And Mikey's in the house, even though he has a link or the ability to pop in anytime he wants. Sends in $5 and says, call me old fashioned. Okay, old fashioned. But Mexican Iron Man thinks the Disney princesses and evil queens should not have nut sacks or penal rods. Whoa, my. Yep, I'm controversial.
I had an argument with the WD on his show in that if Disney, kind of made it clear ahead of time that there was a little bit of this fun going on, because I've mentioned before, I've performed on the same stage as drag queens, and they're a wonderful class of human being, and more funny in the dressing room than on stage, quite frankly. it's quite something dressing up backstage with them. Having an outrageous drag queen playing the evil queen is not out of the ordinary. You would have seen it at any USO show, back in the day. That's not.
How old were the audience at that USO show?
Exactly.
These are individuals who are killing other human beings. That's how old they were.
Yeah, exactly.
I know where you're coming from, Andre, but still, I think there is a place in society for guys who could really turn on.
Absolutely, no one is saying otherwise. But that's the thing. There's a time. There's a place.
Go ahead, Andre.
No, sorry. That was just it. There's a time and a place. I agree. And maybe inside the Magic Kingdom is not the place at any time.
Yeah, perhaps it's that's okay. I'm just saying that is one role I wouldn't have any issues seeing about, and if it was made clear. But the problem is Disney doesn't know what they're doing with this. They're weird. They have no idea how to properly set the table to make this an acceptable, even barely acceptable idea. And I think it can be done. My point is it can be done, but they're not.
If they didn't if they did an after look, if they did like back in the day, the old Pleasure Island, you know, it's 21 plus, it's after hours, adults only. No one would say shit about that, right?
And I mentioned that last week.
Again, you know, okay, sorry, some people would, but I mean, the vast majority of people would not say anything about this. I wouldn't say anything about it. It's like it's adults, and adults can choose what they want to do.
That's an interesting. So you're saying like after 9. Disney
and that's what I was saying last week, Paul.
I missed that. Sorry, Tom.
No, they want to do a boardwalk event that's in down, that's in a Disney Springs somewhere in a closed venue that's adults only. It's 21 plus. It's ticketed, and there's it's limited. Yeah, they do whatever they want. They want to do a burlesque show. They want to do whatever they want to do. Do it. It's fine. I don't think anybody would care about it. But when you're doing it at your flagship amusement park, which is generally aimed towards children or supposed to be aimed towards children, there's a difference here without, like you said, any disclosure, right? That this is a thing, when knowing that there's a certain percentage of people that, that need to be aware of that. And the funny thing is too, it's especially the political ilk that wants us to be mindful of the Middle East. This would be wildly offensive to most people in that region of the world. So, it's very interesting that they failed to see the need in this push for inclusivity to consider those that might be wildly offended by their children being exposed to that.
Well, and another point I brought up on this last week when I went on and said, yes, most people who are traditionally into the drag community and stuff like that will be the first ones to tell you it's not for children, right? It's an adult comedy show, right? And in that respect, like, the other thing I'm seeing as a problem is there's this whole new generation of LGBTQ people who I've stumbled on no less than like 3 videos so far. And I brought this up to Flash and we almost talked about it one week, but video game stuff got in the way. But they're talking about all this gay coding in classic Disney films and stuff like that. And these people are gravitating towards the villains, right? And it's like, okay, so for years you yelled at Hollywood saying, quit making LGBTQ people the villains, but now you're embracing it, right? To the point where they've even made Ursula into an ant now and a semi-decent character in the new Little Mermaid cartoon they're bringing out. Like, do they not understand this? Like, it's just tearing my mind apart to try and fathom how they're getting their heads around this shit. You've pissed and moaned for years that you didn't want LGBTQ representation to be villains only, and now you're doing nothing but embracing the villains, right? And it's ridiculous. And I don't know. I don't know if you guys have been noticing this or not, but gay coding is a word that I've been hearing a lot lately.
Well,
too.
Once again, it's just like academia, Gen Z language that's being pushed out, right? Which I just view it all as very 1984-esque of the redefining stuff versus saying, hey, look, they're trying to paint a very specific narrative of who is a hero and who's a villain, who's good and who's bad. And it's very obvious at this point in Hollywood.
Well, and here's a good example of that stupid Cruella movie where her parents were killed by the dogs or something like that. It's like, just
everybody is redeemable.
Yeah. Just tell me you don't understand these villains without telling me you don't understand these villains. Right. And I have no idea what this is saying, Chato. So you're going to have to figure out what Paco Sith is saying here with $2.
Yeah, this is Latin.
Yeah. Est Elia Iacta est et Disney. Chato. I know agricola transfluium is the only thing I remember from my Latin.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Do you know what that means? Agricola transfluium. Fluvium. No.
Well, it sounds like something Harry Potter would say.
The farmer crosses the river.
Oh, I thought it was something dirty, knowing you.
No, they didn't teach dirty Latin, I'm afraid.
They didn't do dirty Latin.
No, they didn't teach dirty Latin.
Accident Seller sends in 20 Norwegian Kronen, says, I'm Gen X and I never seen a lot of movies that Paul mentioned. Well, maybe
Gen
it sounds like you need to start a list.
Well, also, but hold on, but he wasn't talking about, like, to be fair to Paul, like, there's one or two, you mentioned a few that I didn't heard either, but I'm not a film student. Well, you guys were talking about in context of film school, right?
That's exactly what I was. Right, that's exactly my context. You should know these films. You should know Eisenstein. You should know Lena Riefenstahl. You need to know these things if you're in film school.
Yeah,
right. If you're in film school, right? Once again, that's the whole thing, right? I don't expect like Bob the plumber to know that.
No,
right?
No. I wasn't trying to be a film snob.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. In context, we knew what you meant.
Yeah. So.
Then we got Mikey coming in again. Says, call me old fashioned again. Because I don't want drag queens reading my 11-year-old books at story hour and ain't paying extra for Disney Adams apples. No, I agree and understand.
God damn it, Mike.
And there's nothing that says you can't do that on like a Sunday night or something like that on off major time for families. where you can have like drag night at Disney World or something like that. There's nobody who says you can't. But in that, no one under the age of 21 gets in. Right?
Well,
Like that's the whole point.
And you can elect to go to that event, which is almost treat it like a night of joy, right? Like or whatever else, right? You don't have to go to that. That's not the main thing. If you walked into if you walked into a Disney main day during the day event, during the day just theme park, and it's got Christian, iconography, Christian messages, there would be an uproar. It would be incendiary. So, to me, it's kind of the same parallel in a different way, right? So,
right.
Or any religion, right? If it was any like sort of religious iconography during a specific main event without any warning, without any preposition, without any buffering, that would be a huge controversy. In fact, there would probably be lawsuits over it, I would say. But yeah,
I'm looking for Disney's Kefia Parade Day.
Well, and we got some other topics we want to hit here, so we'll get back to super chats in just a moment. But I want to grab these two since they were.
Mike has finished tax season. Now he's texting us.
Yeah.
He's not.
Dark King sends in an Australian too. Speaking of Mike, says Kung Fu Fanta is the Mexican Iron Man's favorite. Well, that one was for culture, and I missed it while I was here. Sorry about that, Dark King, but the joke still lands. Hyper Guyver 2 sends in 5 and says a Zendaya sandwich, 2 slices of white bread, and a single strip of bacon. Culture, does this seem? I wish we'd have got this before you left. Seem like an accurate comparison on how bad it is. Yeah, I'm sure he would agree.
A strip of bacon has more shape.
Yeah, and then we're gonna wrap this up for now with Pilgrim Media says, "Do we agree that Disney has crossed the Rubicon?"
I think the bridge collapsed. When they were attempting.
They rammed a boat into it. You mean?
No.
I think it's a rub and tug icon.
Oh,
I'm hot today.
Yeah. Well, I would say they crossed the Rubicon a long time ago. I don't know exactly at what point they did, but the Rubicon has been crossed. And now they seem to try to be walking back from the Rubicon again. I don't know how well that's going to work. But
they've completely discombobulated their brand. No one knows what it is anymore.
Well, we know what it's not. That's what it used to be. Disney is no longer in the business of creating magic moments.
Creating anything. They don't make movies anymore.
But we have had some magic moments in court recently, haven't we, Tom?
And somebody who used to make movies for better or worse. Somebody who, wow. How do you talk about this guy?
It's hard. It's really I'm going to be honest with you. Like, it's hard even to give. It's really funny even to give legal analysis. It's difficult to do it when you get in a topic like this. I almost feel like, to be honest, talking about this topic makes me as uncomfortable as when I remember when I was first a young YouTuber and I'd talk about the George Floyd situation from a legal perspective. This is almost as bad, but in the Me Too sense, right? This is like that much of a thing because you have to caveat it with this is the legal analysis, which has nothing to do with your moral feelings or justice or what is right or what is wrong. There's what is due process, and everybody is in the US is due process. You can't say we're waiving it for this person because we, based on whatever feeling or social media, or even based on, reports, which may or may not be reliable. Maybe they all are reliable. That doesn't mean you get to waive due process for a person.
Unless you're in New York.
That's not the country
there's an election that you can totally do it.
Yeah, that's kind of funny how that works. But I guess the best way to preface this is kind of, I think, how I've been presenting this idea, because I've been saying this for a while, and I got a lot of pushback early on from this.
And by the way, I'm starting to see. Tom, you were the person who's been saying this for the longest time.
Yeah, and the media is starting to notice too. And I said this when I read through this case. I'm like, look, I'm not saying that Harvey, not Bob, his brother's Bob. I'm not saying that Harvey isn't a piece of shit. I'm not saying he isn't scum of the earth. I'm not saying he isn't guilty of a lot of the shit that he's being accused of, or probably worse. In fact, I'm probably sure he's probably guilty of worse. But reading through that court case, the first thing I said was, how did they even get a conviction out of this? Like, this is some of the flimsiest she said bullshit I've ever seen in my life. And I don't mean that on in any way, as far as speaking on Harvey's character, like you just said, you read through it and it's like, this is a fucking kangaroo court. Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I hate this guy, but he did not get his day in court. That's for sure.
And the problem is when you change a legal precedent, when you change rules, when you create new schemes just to get one person, those schemes and rules and procedures are abused against people that are relatively innocent. I mean, and I'll use another person who you guys will know because he's in the TV movie area, Danny Masterson, right? There was a big issue in the sentencing of Danny Masterson where people, and this is similar to what happened to Harvey Weinstein, and we'll get into the legal specifics here, but where folks that were essentially not convictions, that were not upheld, that were not held as valid, they were allowed to testify as part of his sentencing. So essentially people that had not proven that they had valid claims were allowed to comment, right? Were allowed to give their impact and give their statements when those could be completely manufactured, completely fabricated. There's no ability to tell whether they were true or not, whether there was any veracity to them, period at all. And that's because they've specifically changed a lot of the laws regarding anything sexual. So anytime there is a crime of any sexual nature, they, in many states, such as California and many other states as well, have and the federal government even has changed laws related to anything of a sexual nature because of mainly this guy, right? So this is why this is such a big thing. And I mean, it is a huge shift in how you deal with propensity evidence. And now propensity evidence is any evidence that somebody has the propensity to commit a crime. But that type of evidence is usually extraordinarily limited because it is super dangerous to try to make assumptions that based on behavior, which may or may not be criminal, which may or not be proven, that somebody is guilty of a crime. So I'll let you guys go from there, but that's so much of the background.
No, and I thank you for that because it's a very well said, and I mean, you pretty much laid it all out there, Andrew. I mean, that's the problem with this. I hate being the person in the position I'm in to say these things, but due process is important, right? Regardless of who you are or who is the person that's on the stand, you want to believe that if it was you, you're going to get treated fairly, right? And the system isn't going to railroad you.
Treated
fairly.
Regardless
of how we feel about this individual, he kind of got railroaded by the system. And what this does, though, on a bigger plane, to kind of even draw some attention away from, the elephant in the room, is that I think this is starting to bring the whole Me Too movement into question, right? And this started mainly with Bill Cosby in 2014, and then Weinstein was the next big whale, I guess you want to say, for them.
Kevin Spacey.
And Kevin Spacey was another big one, I think, in between. I think you're right there.
But I think debatably, most people would say Weinstein was the key,
like ground zero kind of thing.
You know what the issue with the Me Too movement is? The one issue, it stopped. Why? How come it's not still going? That's why it was bullshit.
Well, what bothered me is they didn't
Amber Heard and Johnny Depp really put a
no. But my point is, has not become there are many individuals out there from many groups, both straight and not straight, whatever, that could have been sucked in. Sorry to use the term sucked in, but into this entire vortex. There are communities out there that are very bad to each other, and somehow they went untouched. It's so the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement is its undoing.
Yes.
No, I agree, Paul, because one of the first things I said about it is, what about the kids, right? Because nobody was ever saying it was all about the women, right? It was never about the kids, and even very rarely about homosexuals, like you just said. Because look, well, you got basically the only two that you can point to that are in that situation would be, you just said his name, Spacey and Bryan Singer, right? And even the Singer's kind of questionable because, look, I'm not saying he's also not a creep or a piece of shit, but we were going to do a story on him. And as we got digging deeper into the story, again, you were getting into a lot of, well, in this case, he said crap, Right. Like, and there was even some obfuscation going on. It's like, okay, now wait a minute. Is the individual 17 or are they 18? Because there's a big difference there. Because not only, they're like, you're just making it look more salacious than it really is in that respect. But that had nothing to do with,
part of the challenge too is
yeah.
what part of the challenge too is when you're trying to convict someone, you're going to go for the jugular. And in the United States, one of the things that we noticed from the outside is that you are an unbelievably competitive country. And when you go for something, you don't go for it small, you go for it big. Even if it means altering, as Andrew said, things get fudged and changed because there's nothing more important than victory. Nothing.
Correct.
And you guys go for it in a way that I don't know what other country does that isn't a dictatorship. And it is really amazing to watch from a distance. So that's what we're seeing here. And does it end up being fair? No. I mean, we've always talked about what is it? The law is an ass.
To be fair though, Chato, I mean, and once again, it's maybe my Americanness pushing back. So let me just like bald eagle and go fly a flag.
I'm impressed with.
We have we have a real constitution, right? Unlike Canada or many other countries, like that actually has things in it that stand for on a national level, and that we saw that during the pandemic, for example, right, where we actually have fundamental rights which are able to push back against a lot of this tyranny, and due process is one of the things that's fundamentally baked into our constitution. Whereas in other countries, it could be just waived. If Trudeau wanted to change these laws, it would be done, and there's no pushing back against it, right? Versus what happened to Harvey. What happened in this case, when you look at at least the New York case, specifically the New York case, right, was a violation of his constitutional due process rights, right? So
that's the conclusion.
That to me, and yes, the prosecutor went big. You're absolutely right, because they want to win, and you're absolutely right about that. And they want to not just win, they want to hang him, right? And especially when it's in the news, they want to go big, which is why a lot of these cases, if you guys remember Casey Anthony, right? They wanted to go for the murder one. Why? Not because it's legally easy to prove. It's really hard to prove first degree murder because you have to prove a certain intent, right? A specific intent. They could have gotten a manslaughter most likely, but they wanted the big item. They wanted the big W, the big M, the big murder. So they went for that. Harvey is a similar thing. They could have gotten Harvey on a slam dunk on more minor charges, minor issues, but they had to go for the grape, right? And that requires a certain level of intention and a certain level of proof, which is more difficult to get.
And to go back to something that Paul just kind of maybe rhetorically asked, or said, you are right about the Me Too movement, I guess, in one way. But the other thing, though, the reason why it fell apart is for the very reason it didn't exist in the first place, is because when you have people that are in certain places of power, they are going to be targets, right? So historically, we have required a little bit more evidence in some of those cases, I guess, or at least more, it seems like, you better come to the table with something or nobody's going to believe your story, right? So that's like traditionally the way it works, especially when you have very powerful, rich people involved. And it's not so much that they can cover it up, but it's more so that they become the target then, right? And that's why this Me Too movement was built on faultiness to begin with, in my opinion, because this has always been this way. And the problem is that I felt like is like, look, the only places that still needed to be cleaned up of this problem were Washington, corporate America, and Hollywood. Everywhere else has never had so much of a problem with this. Like I said, you ask most average people who work in everyday blue collar jobs, if you have sexual harassment as a problem at your workplace, most of them will say, no, we've never had that problem. You know what I mean? Because it's not, the casting couch does not really exist in a factory.
You know what I mean? And to divert attention, the whole Me Too movement very rapidly deteriorated into get anyone on creepy dates.
Yep.
And
they had to grasp for straw. They had to grasp for straws because the vast majority of the charges.
The way he asked me out made me feel creepy. Even then it became like casting shade on somebody just by saying shit like that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because they don't have anything else
in the corporate environment. It stopped male bosses or C-level individuals, even hugging or touching a woman
or
at
being
all.
in the same room. It led to a bunch of people following the Mike Pence rules.
Yes.
Which
And,
which by the
yeah.
way, in a corporate American setting, you have to follow the. I mean, it's not optional anymore. I mean, you do have to do that in modern day American corporate life. You've got to follow the Mike Pence rule. I mean, keep that office door open. Do not close the door. You know, if there's a female staff in your room and you're a man, I mean, you should definitely never do that.
Well, this is interesting. Lily Von Stoop, who's very tired, says, Tom, my whole life, the only time I've been hit on at work was since I've been self-employed. It did not
haven't been hit on.
Haven't been hit on the work.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so that's fair, I guess. But you must be a good-looking woman then, huh? Lily Von Stoop. We all know.
Well,
what she looks like.
and once again, we
Madeline
have to say
Kahn.
like okay, maybe she, you know, once again, hit on at work is one thing, but you know, once again, like there's that question of like, when does this rise to illegal behavior?
That's
right?
what I was getting at. Yeah.
And it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but like we have to have that conversation and like be real about like what is things that are unprofessional and what is illegal. What do we want to be throwing people in jail for? And
yeah, I was being funny back at Jay, but yeah.
Yeah,
but no, that's my point, is because we've gotten to this point where like that was what I was saying, is we got from where, you know, people actually had physical assault to being to just you know, Harvey asked me to come to a room or something like that, or somebody asked me on his behalf, to somebody just asking me out being all of a sudden assault, right? Like, and like I joked about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got to that point had it not started to kind of fall apart as it has, where people could just say, oh, mentally they assaulted me. And we kind of saw that with the whole Trump case recently, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I don't think a lot of people can say that there was any proof that happened, but that chick sure did believe something happened, and that's why.
So, I mean, Andrew, are you saying that what happened now with Harvey is a good thing within the context of due process? A victory for due process?
That is exactly what I'm saying. I think this is I know it's, and I hate that it's Harvey Weinstein. You know, once again, it's not a moral thing, it's not an ethical thing. But if I look at it objectively, is it better or worse for due process? It's better.
So my next question is, did he benefit from due process because he still had money and was still maybe a powerful person? And there's a lot of people out there who are not getting that benefit because they don't have access.
That is a very fair criticism. And that's true of all law and all lawsuits and lawfare, is that the parties with more money are advantaged, because one of the strategies which I've pointed out consistently regarding my coverage of Disney, I pointed out from the beginning, Disney wins in court, quote unquote, all the time because they generally have more money than the other party. And they can procedurally drag it out, which is what we saw in the case with Florida that they attempted to do, but they pulled back, just at the right time, because they were right about it. Actually, ironically, the audit was coming out for the CFTOD for the next year, which they just published. And they're about to have to say whether or not any discrepancies happened, right, in the criminal and financial sense over the past. And somehow after that settlement, the financial audit finds that there's nothing untoward happens, right? Whereas they would have had to go back and say, oh, no, there are actually financial crimes here. There were actually other things that happen here. So the point of the matter is, typically money and access to funds does grant better outcomes in court. Yes.
There's a very important thing with that. Tom, go ahead. Then I have a...
Well, I was just going to say, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Andre.
Okay. Yeah. In a sense, it's important that it is the likes of precisely Harvey Weinstein that has a conviction overturned. And here's why. It's a very high-profile case that everyone sees. You have a million other people that are innocently found guilty all the time. It happens. Maybe not million, but it happens. And Definitely. There are many reasons for that. It could be that people are overwhelmed by emotion and in that moment, and you need a little bit more distance in time to think. That's when these overturns tend to happen. And the way that it begins is with these high-profile cases. he has money to actually get his case looked at again, but which is something that most other people can't. But it does set a precedent that in this case you were too rushed. What other cases may that have happened in as well? This is going to open the door for other appeals that may be more necessary. But because this is high profile, it's going to have that kind of impact. I don't think it would have had this impact if this had been some random nobody who didn't do anything. Now we're talking about it here, entertainment show. This made headlines all over the planet. People see that something went very wrong here, which they wouldn't have if it had been a random nobody. But because of this, random nobodies who were found guilty of something that they shouldn't have been found guilty of maybe will get a second chance because of this. Also, it's not like Harvey is free to go here. I mean, this guy, he is guilty of maybe not this particular thing, but it's sufficiently other things that he is in jail anyway, and he's probably going to stay in jail for the rest of his life, no matter what happens, because he's been found guilty of other things where he indisputably was guilty. So the important thing here is that this is actually the system of justice correcting itself, because an error had been made. The guy deserves to be in jail, but he didn't deserve to be in jail for this one particular thing, and he has been found guilty of other things, but he does deserve to be in jail.
Well,
for. So all is
yeah,
right
in California where it's harsher. But what I was going to say before too is, yes, Harvey is high profile, Cosby's high profile. But what did them and Les Moonves and some of the other people that have had this happen to them have in common, besides the obvious? Well, that is that they were losing power, right? Cosby wasn't Bill Cosby anymore. Like, he hadn't had a show in a few years. He wasn't this high profile person in Hollywood who could make things happen like he used to, a mover or shaker or anything like that. Same thing for Harvey. He didn't have Disney behind him anymore. He has gone from being worth 300 million now down to about 25 million is the estimate. So this whole thing has cost him that much. And that's the other thing too I was going to bring around to, and Andrew, I don't know, you can probably speak on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of these people he already paid off.
Correct.
So, I mean, can they even really do this? That's my question, I guess.
No. Well, it depends, right? So that's actually interesting because there was Congress actually passed, and this is a big one. This is why you see a lot of sexual harassment and sexual type allegations, is because if you had an NDA, right? So let's say you had an NDA and a settlement agreement, or like a payoff as part of an NDA, but that NDA isn't sexual in nature, you can breach that NDA and bring a cause of action. So that's one of the things that came out of the Me Too era is, let's say you'd, like you said, paid people off, right? Well, those are now open, right? Now there's a little bit of a timing issue because you can't have laws that are ex post facto, so you can't pass a law and then make it completely retroactive. But like going forward, right? That's something. But one thing that's really important to clarify, and I agree with, by the way, I agree with everything you said, Andre. But there's one thing that needs to be clarified, and that is the California charges are not bulletproof. So and that doesn't mean he didn't do something that, once again, it's not a moral thing or whatever, but legally they're not yet bulletproof. In fact, they are appealing those charges. So, and one of their arguments is actually that in the California case, they presented evidence of his conviction in New York. And now that New York case has been overturned, that fundamentally changes the California case. So I don't want to come out here and sound like it's bulletproof. It's going to be harder in California, but is it possible that he could get his California charges overturned? Yes. So it's not.
Yeah.
It may not be
I didn't know that
probable,
part, but
it's not. Yeah, that's what I really want to.
See, I didn't follow the California one as much from my memory. I think I remember, unless I did the opposite and I read the other one. But
I think it's probable? No. Is it possible? Yes.
Because the one I read through was all women who were technically in a relationship with him at the time, even though he was married. So they were in consensual relationships. And there was other parts of it that I'm just like, okay, I'm reading this going, how is this not consensual or even tough to prove without any kind of physical proof in a court of law? Because, like, we brought up, I started to wonder if this is one of those points where him being so high profile hurt him and the whole Me Too thing. And while I was reading through it, because I'm like, any other time you've seen a case like this come to court, I would have seen it either get thrown out or the person most likely be found innocent, because it's just a bunch of, hearsay stuff. There was no actual evidence. And not to get too personal about this or gross, like the amount of stuff that Harvey would have to go through to even be sexually active makes it very difficult for me to believe their stories on certain things. Let's just put it that way. And I'm not trying to say that things didn't happen, and I'm not saying, like, everybody else has said on this panel that he didn't do things in the past that weren't worth him sitting in jail, but that's not the case here, though. That's not the people that were bringing the cases against him, though. And that's what I noticed as a problem.
If the condom doesn't fit, you must acquit.
And mind you, in the California case, oh God, in the California case, most of the claims against him were tossed, right? And once again, one of the big issues was he was convicted on one specific charge in California, but the others were tossed, including was it Newsom's wife, right? The documentarian, like that was tossed. But yet many of those ladies were still allowed to testify at parts of his trial. So there's lots of questions about the California proceedings as well. So once again, they're not bulletproof, but it's going to be a lot more difficult of a journey. And none of this makes Harvey a morally innocent person, or none of this means he didn't do something.
Well, and again, the problem is they did not pick out the other individuals, both male and female, who have acted just as egregiously as he has.
Right.
Maybe because he's not a particularly good-looking man. Who knows? But
there's that.
He is certainly not the only person.
No, and that's
Hollywood who has behaved this
there's worse.
way.
There's
worse. Oh, there's much worse.
And that's why I say he's the scum, because he's just the scum at the top of the swamp, right? Like,
he's the easy target.
Easy target, exactly that. Like, you go lower, they're creepier. Like I've said, I don't remember where I said it, but I said, you want to really see how deep the scum goes? Go seek out some interviews with like Macaulay Culkin and some other people about the kids stuff in Hollywood. You will not have a very good day afterwards. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, no, like what he did.
This is tame in comparison.
Let's just put it this way: that what Harvey did is in no way to be excused or anything like that. But it was within the realms of sexual normalcy, if we put it that way, in that the victims were...
Let's take emotion off the table for a second, Andre. Yeah. There's another problem here. A lot of these could be argued that they were, I scratch your back, you scratch my back type of situation.
Mutually beneficial transactions.
And that's why most of these were tossed. Right, because when you really looked at the facts behind this is why really only in California even only one stuck, only one case stuck, only one charge stuck. But that's all it takes, right, to make somebody a convicted criminal, is one specific charge. Most of them, if you looked at it, that's how the facts played out, which was quid pro quo, or sorry, not quid pro quo, but exchange, right?
Tit for tat, yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And again, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but as Andre is getting to, and some other people are getting at here too, is like, he is not the only one who does this shit in Hollywood, right? And I'm Paul, I'm sure you, in your experience, have heard stories and things, and I'm not asking you to get into specific things, but I mean, come on. That's why I was saying earlier about, yes, I'm sure there's dating and other things involved in blue collar day-to-day stuff, but in my experience, I don't ever remember a casting couch type situation where sexual harassment was brought in. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm getting at here. Like, these things generally only happen in the corporate Hollywood arena. Now, yes, it does happen from time to time in other places, but it just seems to be more of a,
let's
concentrated in those areas.
Many in Hollywood were very happy to see him go down and have the entirety of the media focus on him and not anyone else. And there were many others to focus on. He was a very suitable target. So like, okay, here's the demon, here's the dragon. He's the only problem. When he's gone, everything is fine. That's kind of like I get that the sense was in Hollywood. They were very happy to sacrifice him, so the focus would be on him and not on anyone else.
I mean, a couple of people who obviously predated him and were dead, Louis B. Mayer and Darrell F. Zanuck, were legendary abusers. I mean, Mayer groped Garland, Judy Garland. I mean, when she was a young thing. So, I mean, the one person who was tarred and feathered, the silent film fat guy, turned out to be completely innocent.
Eddie Arbuckle.
Yeah, that was a complete diversion. So yeah, I mean, you know what? I have, when I was in LA, I ran into the odd person at midnight in the, in the boardroom, stopping the secretary, and I backed out in a very comedic way. It was very funny. If anyone had seen me,
it was odd because you had just finished stooping your secretary.
Yeah. I was a pretty hot commodity. Let me tell
kidding.
You.
I'm kidding.
Before we lose Andrew, let's move on to a couple of super chats, because I'm sure we have some that's going to need his expertise.
Well, and this is a good point too. And this is where I feel like a lot of them, I'm surprised they didn't. Because all you need to do is produce a couple of witnesses or people that would have been in the industry that said, yeah, I got a call from Harvey and they told me not to hire this person. Right. And that isn't that enough, Andrew, right there to kind of go after him more so than the other stuff, I would think.
And yeah, let me clarify one thing legally, a little legal education here. I was reticent earlier when I used the phrase quid pro quo, because typically that's used in employment context. So that is a specific legal term. So there's like what we use colloquially, and then there's the legal term. So there's two forms of employment harassment, which is hostile work environment, which is a general environment that is hostile towards sex, religion, race, whatever. And there's quid pro quo, which is an exchange of favors, but it's typically specifically, here's the key, between employer and employee and somebody who's in a superior position, right? So it's not necessarily going to apply to the Harvey Weinstein situation of I do you a favor, you do me, because they might not be an employer-employee situation.
And it's not out of the bounds of historic accuracy and reality that it didn't not benefit the individual. Like, it's not, you can't point 100% the not the appearance, but the advancement of the quid pro quo, what do you call it? Opportunity. Some of those actually did turn into opportunities.
Right. They proved to be profitable.
Correct. So, and I'm not saying it's right. And,
but it's
the fact that I turned down Harvey really did hurt my career.
It did.
What can I do?
That's why you're in Canada.
That's why you're here.
Dave Trapera sends in, what was this again, Andre? Remind me. This is
Argentinian Sol. Was that it?
I believe so. I've had 2 jobs as an administrative employee, and I had been hit on or touched inappropriately more than once. It does happen. We just don't talk about it.
That's terrible.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
And let me be very clear. There are real situations of this. I mean, I hear with this in many different countries. I hear about this, in different places. My boss does X, Y. My boss, grabs my ass, does something. And by the way, it happens both genders. It can happen to men. It can happen to women. Right? These things are very real, and they're not to be joked about, and they are serious and should be prosecuted when they're a valid claim. Absolutely 100%, right? But there is a burden of proof to it. There is a certain amount of procedure they have to go through it. And the problem with the Me Too movement, for me, from a legal standpoint, was waiving due process, right? I'm totally okay with prosecuting every single valid claim, send them all to jail if they're valid, right? But we've got to go through the proper procedures. That's all.
And my point with this, and I think this was more aimed at what I had said, and with all fairness, I'm not glad, but I'm glad people are actually chiming in and speaking out on it. But my point was still that I'm pretty sure it's more prevalent in the corporate Hollywood.
It's a drag that it's abused by both sides. I don't know to what degree. I'm not going to get myself into trouble for saying it, but we know men who have been unduly or irreparably harmed by a false accusation.
Yeah.
So
And that's
all
the
of it is
problem.
bad. All of it is
Yeah.
bad. People can be just horrible to each other.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, just ask Diddy, as Skibo goes out, says out there, Skibo says out there in the chat. I mean, here's a situation where even if he's innocent of all this stuff that he's being so-called accused of, it doesn't matter. It's already out there, right? It's in the zeitgeist. The joke will never go away. He is now forever Puff
Well,
Diddler.
no, sure. And I've explained to my son that the worst thing that could have possibly have happened to O.J. Simpson was actually being let off, because then the world became his jail. The jail was all suddenly much bigger.
Well, there's a lot more to get into with that one, but
No, but
this
I'm
one's specifically
yeah.
for you here.
Yeah, Paul B.
Yeah. Be careful, Paul, says ActionCom for $20. Being rich is a double-edged sword in America justice. It may help you get out of situations, but it also paints a bullseye on your back. Yeah, that's the point I was coming at.
Sure. Yeah, that's correct. That is
what
correct.
happened to Harvey W. happened because he is Harvey W. Yes.
I forget. Somebody pointed this out. I was listening to another video, but one of the reasons why wealthy people have bodyguards is not because of physical threat, because many of these people are big guys like Shaq or Conor McGregor, right? Like fighters, trained fighters.
It's so they don't hit somebody.
Yes, it's for legal liability. They also have drivers for legal liability, because if somebody sees Elon Musk driving himself down the road, they're going to run their car into him, because then they've got him on potential liability, right? Because he's the driver. It's driver versus driver. You drag him into court, right? Versus if you've got,
and a lot of these, yeah, exactly. Go ahead. You're going exactly where I was going, Andrew. Continue.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
Just you have somebody you pay to do the role, right? Whether it's a driver, bodyguard, etc. They're taking on that legal liability, so you don't have to worry about that. That's completely removed from you. So there is a pattern on your back. People will try to mess with you if you are rich, but that doesn't. But also on the same side, like Paul said, that does give you access to things like lawyers, right? And being able to pay our ridiculous wages.
Well, that's why I drive a Subaru Forester, which is the most popular car amongst lesbians.
So you're a target. No,
by a completely different class of individuals.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're 100% right, Andrew. And I think this also feeds into sometimes why, even if people are innocent of things, they sometimes, if they're rich, they just pay people off just to get them out of their way. And I've heard of lawyers where that's their advice to them, even though I don't agree with it. But yeah.
I would advise a client to do that in certain circumstances. I mean, many times when I'm talking with businesses, it's cheaper. We just do the ROI and it's cheaper. And it may sound
especially
bad,
with a business,
yeah, it's your business, right? And it's like, okay, we can fight this and we'll win, but it's going to cost us $250,000, or we can pay this person $10,000 to go the fuck away. We're going to pay him $10,000. We're going to pay him $10,000.
The more famous one of that is the Michael Jackson situation, right? Where he, and I still believe that he was innocent, and that's just my opinion. And the courts agreed with me for the most part on most of those situations. But that being said, he fought tooth and nail with his lawyers and Sony, but they pushed him hardcore to just pay those guys off just to get him to go away. Correct. And he was all for going to court. He's like, no, I want to just go and get this done with and clear my name, right? Like that was his whole thing. But yeah. But anyway, that being said, like, yeah, I've heard that before in the past where lawyers would just say, just pay him off. Just get him out of your hair, you know. To me, I think that's a worse image, but yeah.
It's a worse image, but just it's about reality, right? And like it's expensive, and that's just the truth.
Yeah.
And we tune talk. Go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, we tune talk translated Alea iacta est, which means the dice is cast, meaning it's up to fate. Yeah, this is true. I believe this is a quote from Caesar himself, which is how you pronounce Caesar. Rambam 3000 also said this for £5. Alea iacta est means the die is cast. Julius Caesar said it after he crossed the Rubicon with an army, something that was illegal under Roman law.
I like how you pronounced Caesar.
That's correct. It's Caesar. That is where the Germanic word emperor, Kaiser, comes from. It's also where the Russian word Tsar comes from. Because here's the thing. The pronunciation of C has changed in modern English. Whenever you see the Roman writing with C, it's never pronounced S, ever. It's always, without exception, pronounced with a K, with the hard C. That's the only way that the Romans
He
pronounced
said hard
C.
C.
Wow.
So yeah. So so a Roman, if you travel back in time and you asked for an audience with Julius Caesar, they'd have no idea who the hell you're talking about. His name was Julius Caesar.
That's very, very.
No more Tom knows.
Thank you, Andre. That's
do
that's
What were you
appreciate
going to
that.
say, Andrew? I'm sorry.
No, I like learning. It's great.
Yeah.
Although I do think Andre, if you went back in time, the first thing they would have a problem with is the fact you're speaking English.
Probably,
Yeah.
probably.
They'd be
But
like,
if you're
what the
English
fuck is this guy saying?
and
Look at
you're
this big
trying
Latin.
to bring back your school Latin or something, you ask for Julius Caesar, definitely you're not going to ask. But yeah, no, fun story. Like anyone who speaks a Germanic language, like myself, or Norwegian, our word for emperor is Kaiser, and that's the correct way to pronounce
Kaiser Wilhelm.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I just want a
Caesar,
sandwich.
Caesar Wilhelm.
Kaiser sandwich.
Yeah.
Sandwich. Yeah. On a Kaiser roll.
Yeah.
Chaos Sonic once. Go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, no, sorry. Just one final trivia on Caesar. The Caesar salad. That's has nothing to do with Julius Caesar. That's just some Italian dude who invented that. Completely.
So far,
unrelated
all
to-
you've
Well, I
learned this
stand with the
year is
Italian
that
dude,
Julius
Andre. I
Caesar
stand with the
is
Italian
the
dude.
salad dressing dude.
Yeah. Those are two different dudes. One was Julius Caesar, and the other is some Italian called Caesar.
Yeah. So even Bill and Ted got it wrong. Anyway, Chaos Sonic 1 says the thing about Harvey is that this kickstarted Me Too, and now people are going to get back at the brats. Karma bitch, it is coming hard. Well, I think they're going to hope it just kind of goes away without, too much fanfare. But I know one of the parts that between Amber Heard and the other thing that kind of really put a dent in their whole Me Too movement was what's her face, the daughter of the director Argento, when it come out that she had been sleeping with that underage guy,
Asia
And,
Argento.
Asia, yeah, and yet she was one of the main people of the movement to begin with. So I think she was another person who threw some claims at Harvey. But yeah, and
Totally.
then
Yeah, well, I
Him
mean,
and many others.
and then it
big
just kind of
joke
quieted down.
the big joke is that they had the guts or whatever the circumstance was to go after Harvey, but there's a whole, again, we talked about the fact that there's a whole other people in Hollywood with just as much, if not more power, that they would have been scared to death to go after because then it
Absolutely.
would have truly ruined their careers.
You're not wrong.
It's hypocrisy, which is, the fuel of most humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of humor, we are unfortunately losing Paul.
Yeah. And I just wanted to read this as a follow-up from Chaos Sonic. Seriously, the Me Too movement destroyed lives, and now karma will come back, and hopefully now gender relations will start healing. Well, hopefully.
Well, Louis C.K., that was crazy. Pee Wee Herman didn't get charged, but
Well, that was
a farce. So
yeah. Did we have any more for Paul, though? Andre, I didn't see any. I just wanted to make sure.
I didn't see anything else
Okay.
either at first glance.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, Paul. As always, too bad you don't get to keep on hanging on with us, because I really wanted to hear what you had to think about Paramount's situation right now. But yeah,
that'd be later. I had an argument with my wife that she claimed that I wasn't sexually active enough to be accused of Me Too. I was completely.
That's her telling you something, Paul.
She just said, "Oh yeah, Paul, Me Too. You never." I was completely.
She's saying, "Come Me Too me," basically. Me Too me, baby. That's what she's trying to tell you. She wants more wine and roses, Paul.
I got a Vietnamese wife just so she could talk like that.
She loved you long time.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, this descended weirdly. Anyways, gentlemen, Andrew, Tom, Andre, always a pleasure. We'll see you anon.
Excellent. All right.
Take
Everyone
care,
check
brother.
out. Call me.
Yes,
and
I have a
Chato.
new appalling news episode today. Please check it out.
I believe we call that reverse Me Tooing. That's what.
What? I'm not good enough to be.
No, he doesn't do it enough.
Jam. Okay. Bye, gentlemen.
Take care, Paul. So yeah, on this, before we lose you as well, Andrew, we got this
Sure.
Paramount situation. I don't know if you know anything about it. Packing Proton says, I really wish Paramount had a team that could adapt the Mirage TMNT comics 1-to-1, starting with V1, Tales, V2, and V4. It's all long overdue. As someone who loves the FW series, it's time to give it a rest. Yeah, I mean, and this is where I said with Last Ronin, if they're smart, they know what to do. And I think that could be a door that opens to a more adult Ninja Turtles. But since we're on the point of Paramount here, as much as I'd love to keep talking about turtles,
I like turtles.
Paramount is in some strange positions right now. I guess, Andre, how would you how would you frame this? I guess is what I'm trying to say here, because they just fired Bob Backish, and they have a earnings call this afternoon.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
I know we've both been invited to join Valiant Renegade for. I don't know if you're going to be able to or not. But
I'll hop in at least, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's a complete shit show, isn't it? The only problem with Bob Backish being fired is that it should have happened 5 years ago.
You know what? That was just going to say, you know what I wish I could do right now? I wish I could go back a few years and talk to ourselves a few years ago and go, look, this is going to be amazing. You just wait. This is going to turn into a fucking shit show in a few years.
And you know what? It's a tragedy because there actually was really, really good opportunity in remerging the two corporations. Unfortunately, it was completely botched because there was only numbnuts working there. Shari Redstone had some very good ideas. Unfortunately, she had the most incompetent bunch of... I don't even know how to put them. How do we describe these people? Like the most incompetent assholes and inbreds working in corporate America were working for Paramount, and they were the ones
basically J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman, Skydance, Michael Bay, Seth Rogen. There's a laundry list of people that they've worked with now, other than Tom Cruise. You can even put Tom Cruise in there for Mission Impossible 7,
I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about the executives.
The executives? Bob Backish shouldn't have been there. First of all, Bob Backish has been there for fucking like 15 years too long, right? Like that's number one. And yeah, like this studio is in such.
And here's the thing. I wager that any three of us, and I'm not even joking now, any three of us could have gone in and done a better job at managing that studio alone than the people who were paid millions upon millions of dollars to do it.
Anyone in this chat, anybody could have done a better job. Because these are the same motherfucking people who put out monster trucks.
Yeah.
Remind the audience what that was all about real quick.
Monster Trucks. That is one of the greatest flops of all time. Came from Paramount under this administration right here. And it was basically an executive. I forget which executive. But basically, he developed the movie by brainstorming with his 3-year-old son.
I think he was
what his 3-year-old thought was cool. And he just figured that he had found like the perfect barometer for this is what's going to click with the general audience. Kind of like some idiots sometimes do in Simpsons episodes when they decide that this guy is so generic that Homer Simpson can be the barometer for the general audience. And that works right up until it doesn't work anymore. Well, it failed right off the bat with Monster Truck, one of the greatest flops of all time. Let's put it this way. It actually changed China politics. I'm not even joking. China changed its legislation to make it more difficult to fund Hollywood productions because they lost so much money on it that it was too much of a losing proposition. And that was mostly because of Star Trek Beyond and Monster Trucks. Of course, there was more to it, but those were the two really big ones.
So yes, Monster Trucks.
Bad, because this is China, where they build entire ghost cities and like write that off as a rounding error. So like that, it's bad when China is making legislation to stop your investment. That's real bad.
Yeah. So they greenlit a $200 million movie based on a 4-year-old's pitch. Wow. Like, they become a Saturday Night Live joke, kids. Like literally.
Hilariously
And let's
bad.
not even, and that doesn't even count all the other missteps they've had. Because let's be real, the only success Paramount has had probably in the last 15, 20 years has been Mission Impossible, which got driven into the ground so hard that last one flopped, and Top Gun. Really, I mean, they've had a few surprise successes here and there, but like nothing that has been enough to like keep the studio afloat. And it's almost like they're working against themselves. Like they had things like Transformers and a few other things that kids love so much that they could have just kept printing money had they done the same shit the right way. Right? You know what I mean? Like it really boggles my brain. But anyway, so on a legal level though, the big thing here going on is that Sherry Redstone, who controls all the controlling vote in the shares, she's being accused by a lot of other shareholders of benefiting herself and herself only. So there's the Skydance deal, there's the Sony deal,
Self-dealing,
and she's kind of being accused of by a lot of other members of the shareholder members that she's being accused of self-dealing. So I don't know how much you've been keeping up with this or not, but I would love to hear your take on this whole.
This is my
fiasco.
first time hearing about it, so that this will be like a very like raw.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to come at it. I mean, obviously, if there's self-dealing, that's going to be dealt with very, very seriously, and that's been the downfall of very many major corporations. But I'd have to look at the facts. I mean, obviously, that's a very serious allegation. But once again, this has led to some of the biggest corporations going down. So it's obviously needs to be investigated.
Well, and we'll see how this pans out. But Andre, have you been reading up on it at all in the last few days at all?
I know I've been traveling the last few days. I was back in Norway and I had very little time, so I wasn't here, but I had a lot I need to do in those days, so I haven't had time to do much research on this in advance, unfortunately. There's a lot going on with Paramount. I mean, that's a big topic right now, and I do believe that the earnings call happening later, that's going to be a real hoot, especially in light of what's going on with Bob Backish here. Of course, they have plenty other incompetents to come and hold that conference call instead. They don't have any good people. This is the problem. They don't have a single good person there. They have some of the best brands and properties in the world, so it shouldn't be possible for a studio to be top 11.
That's the problem they have right now.
Star Trek alone should be $1 billion cash cow. It's not going to be Star Wars, but it should be something that nets them tens of millions every single year in pure profits. And instead, I don't have.
I'll do you better than that, Andre. Here's the problem they have right now. You have things like SpongeBob, Ninja Turtles alone that are probably arguably worth more than what the company is at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
And Star Trek would also probably fall into that range. The only thing I would say about Star Trek is, I mean, yeah, it was worth more then, but even now I'd be surprised if you could pull $1 billion out of it. But yeah.
That's the irony. Like if you are able to get a good deal here and you get the brands with it, I mean, buying Paramount right now is a steal. It's one of the most, you ask me, it's one of the most undervalued.
Why do you think everybody's after it?
It's only because of the sheer mismanagement that it's in the gutter the way that it is. So yeah, of course you have updates because you have Skydance now giving evidently a best and final offer for Paramount. I'm not so sure that's a great idea, but I guess I'd rather see it in Skydance's hands than some tech company. I think Warner or Zaslav's hands probably would be, well, I don't know.
I think Zaslav or Sony would be the best bet. If you want to ask my opinion, because here's the thing about Skydance. Skydance is a big part of the reason why they're in the place they're in right now.
They're part of the problem, absolutely.
They are. Exactly, because 90% of the movies they release are Skydance movies.
Yeah,
so that's part of the problem. That
and for instance, and just to illustrate, like Andrew, did you like the last Terminator movie that wasn't made under James Cameron ownership, which would have been Terminator Sega Genesis? Did you like that one?
I haven't even heard of that one. Sega Genesis.
Well, it's a Terminator Genesis to be a
Genesis. Was that? That's not the one. Yeah, I was like Sega Genesis. Is that the one where Wait, no, which one was the one where in the intro they like just shoot John Connor?
That's
and it
Dark
goes
Fate.
to,
So it'd be the one
That's
before
Dark
that.
Fate. Yeah,
Genesis
my
is the
point
one
was
where they
basically-
recast Sarah Connor in it, and
Yeah.
and
Basically,
seen that
they
one.
pull
I
a
haven't
Star
even seen it,
Trek
which tells you.
09 reboot on the Terminator franchise by going back and changing up 1984 and shit. That was Skydance.
Yeah, no.
And it flopped so badly that James Cameron was able to get the rights back. You know what he did after that? He licensed them straight back to Skydance, and that's when they made the movie where they shot John Connor in the intro. All that was Skydance.
Oh god.
Skydance produces the Transformer films. They produce like the Mission Impossible movies.
I believe they also. I'm not sure.
The Star Trek films they did,
but I think they even did that monster truck pitched by a 3-year-old.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also were behind a lot of JJ's movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ellison or whatever is his name.
Ellison,
right?
Yeah. Yes, he's a son of a billionaire. So it's him and his sister who have basically inherited billions and decided that they want to be studio moguls when they grow up. I'm not even joking.
Well, I know some people are freaking out about Zaslav in the chat. Here's the thing: Sony would be okay, but Tom Rothman is not an IP guy. I don't see Paramount doing very well under Sony because I don't see him being able to nurture those IPs any better than anybody else has for the last 20 years under Paramount. Zaslav, on the other hand, would look at stuff like Ninja Turtles and SpongeBob and go, oh, we can use this. Right? Believe you me, if they bought up Paramount, SpongeBob would be all the fuck over HBO Max tomorrow. Right? Like, because he knows that's a known entity, and SpongeBob is huge with kids still.
Yeah.
That's an obvious.
And also,
that's like a layup.
Yeah. And also, the good thing with Warner buying them is that then they could shut down Paramount Plus, which is just
and that's what I was thinking.
More noise in the streaming market, and roll that into
HBO Max, yeah,
HBO Max where it belongs, yeah.
Because that's the other thing I said too up front was I can see that's where Zaslav probably is the most interested, because I was hearing he was more interested in the sports side of things, and I could see him wanting CBS because then he would want a network. But yeah, as far as Paramount goes, he wouldn't care about he could kill one of their biggest competitions, and that is Paramount Plus. Because as bad as all these streamers are doing, Paramount Plus is one of the only ones that's kind of hanging on by a thread, and that's mainly just because they have like the Yellowstone and the SpongeBobs and the Ninja Turtles and the things that people want. You know, even Star Trek, classic Trek, is still pretty popular on streaming. But yeah, that being said,
less than it was.
Yeah, but that being said, we weren't going to dwell on this too much because we got the earnings call this afternoon, so we'll find out more then. Yeah, we got some super chats to get through, and what's going on in your world, Andrew? Because you've been covering all this VTuber stuff lately.
Yeah, I've noticed. I'm covering a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot going on with. I'm still going to keep an eye on Disney stuff because obviously we have Corona. We have some responses on the Corona case. A lot of folks ask about Disney, and obviously I still get questions. And obviously the Florida case is settled, but there's still a lot of other stuff going on right now. One of the interesting things I'm going to look at, which I haven't had a chance to do yet, but did you know that Disney is building? Well, sorry. There's going to be 2 managed communities that are Disney managed in North Carolina and I believe Arizona. Did you guys know about this?
The gist, but not any detail.
Oh, okay. So I'll get into it, but this is actually going to be a big profit maker for Disney, because one of the things, Disney has this Disney Vacation Club, but I worked in the industry of timeshares, and I've done a lot of these managed districts, special districts in Florida as well. And the most profitable thing is managing these communities. And one of the crazy Orwellian nightmares that's going to happen is having these sort of like Disney managed communities where Disney is setting all these draconian rules, but is also extracting a bunch of money. So not a lot of people know about this, but I see Disney making these moves. So that's going to be a big one that I will cover in the future. And then, of course, I cover all the issues with VTubers, which is crazy because you've got these international companies that are Japanese companies, sometimes Korean, that are wildly exploiting their workers in an insane way. So it's been a fascinating thing for me to dive into. Totally different, but very interesting. Also, I've been covering Stellar Blade, which has been really interesting. The kind of pushback there and the back and forth, and also like what is Sony, who is the obviously PlayStation is Sony, is Shift Up as a developer, right? A lot of this censorship is clearly coming from Sony, but I pointed out to folks that the developer saying, no, we wanted to do it is part probably of their contract and non-disparagement. So they can't blame Sony when Sony wants to censor something. Because as you guys know, Sony has been increasingly controlled by their Western Hollywood, California, branches into this certain path for games, which is just as much of a failure as Hollywood. So that's all very fascinating to me. And I've got a member stream tomorrow morning. I'm at 145K, so almost 150K. So it's yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. And you guys being on your channel has really been a big benefit for me and really help. And your crowd, the Midnight's Edge crowd, is always amazing. So it's always glad to come back here and talk pop culture with you guys and get out of get out of my specific bubble of covering recently VTuber content.
Well, on that note, I got to ask you, since we last spoke, there was kind of a more of a development in the Gina case. Now,
sure,
Disney kind of owned what they had said before in a way. Do you think that helps Gina's case going forward, or is there anything else you've been noticing about it?
It's an attempt at a defense on their side from a legal standpoint. Does it help it? I think it looks bad in the PR sense. I think they're trying to make a very specific legal argument, but they confess a lot and they admit a lot. I think Disney is their lawyers, I think, are very committed to sticking to this angle of First Amendment, right? And that Disney has this First Amendment speech. They did this in the Florida cases, and they're stubbornly stuck to it in a weird way. And I don't know who made this decision for them that this is going to be the hill that they want to die on is First Amendment, but it's a really weird hill because clearly they don't actually believe that. So we'll see where it goes. I actually have a lot of belief still that the Gina case is going to get to discovery and is going to get to some sort of summary judgment, if not settlement, but that it will survive the preliminary motions. I'm very much convinced of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, did you have a little more time with us here, or did you have
yeah I'll hang out for some super chats.
Okay, cool. All right, we got Packing Protons as we start at the top of the list here. Sends in $10 and says, do you think Bluey rights are worth more to Disney than NBA rights, especially considering families can buy Bluey on Blu-ray? There's a lot of blue. That's a good question. I wish we had gotten to this when Pro was here. Sorry we missed it. But Bluey, of course, is the show that Disney licensed, I believe, from Australia or the BBC. I can't remember which. But as far as the NBA rights go, they're kind of up in the air right now, like a jump ball, and everybody's kind of lobbying for them. Warner had a lot of the rights over them, but I'm sure Zaslav's going to try and regain those as much as possible. But any NBA fans in the house tonight that have anything to say about that?
Absolutely not.
Or Bluey fans, for that matter.
I'm more of a Bluey fan.
I was going to say you might have something to say about Bluey if you got kids.
Yeah. I would, you know what? I think that the Bluey rights are worth more. I really think so, because Bluey is their core audience, whereas the sports audience is not. I mean, they like to have it for their cable and sports stuff, but in a pinch, that is something that can be separated away and sold off to someone else. Bluey is family and their core audience. So I think that is something that is more important to the brand. I cannot say what is worth more, but for instance, if they're able to get like part of that with the merchandise and everything, it's potentially worth more. But just because they're Disney, Bluey should be worth more, regardless of what it says on any kind of paper. It's a big, more important thing for them. Because I mean, take away Bluey, Disney Plus collapses. It can't be sustained by Marvel, can't be sustained by anything else. It's Bluey that sustains Disney Plus. And it's not even exclusive. It's available on other platforms.
Yeah, it's technically not even their thing, right? Like, so that's
no, they licensed it.
Yeah. But on that note, they're going to want to stay in that license, I think. And yeah, I think Bob's going to be worried about NBA rights for, NBA being on ABC and having the streaming access to it. But I agree with Andre. I think Bluey is probably more important. Even if you're just staying in there just to hopefully get like a Bluey movie someday out of them or something like that at this point, then you get the rights to that in the US or something like that, maybe. Waltman4 sends in 499, says anime recommendation. Go Loser Ranger. Think Power Rangers Meet the Boys.
I think I've had that recommended on one of my anime streams. So thank you.
Sam, you'd be the one who would know about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Erica and Raph became members. Well, thank you. Matthew W has been a member for 30 months and says, I don't care who Paramount gets sold to. They can't make Trek any worse than it is. Oh, but they can.
Oh,
I'm sure they could.
Yeah. This is something that people need to realize. Have you ever seen a movie where someone says, well, it can't get any worse, and it gets worse? This is the same thing. This is tempting fate. Never.
Andre reminds me of that all the time. He's like, never say that shit. know, it's not, you could always get worse.
Exactly. Like there's no bottom. It can always get worse, no matter how bad things you may think things are. There's always a way for them to get worse. Same with Star Trek.
I mean, I thought you could say that about how
they can make it worse.
And that's kind of what I was getting from about going back and talking to us when we were first getting into this shit. Like, I would love to be able to just tell ourselves how much worse it gets for Paramount at the end of the day. I don't think we could imagine. That was my point. Like, even if you sat us down and told us this 5 years ago, I don't think we'd believe you.
No, I'd be like, fuck, I wish I put some hedges into our Star Trek videos talking up the remerger and the potential of that back then. Because when we did all the analysis we did at the time was accurate. We just failed to predict how completely incompetent the managers would be.
I think you were more right in a way of saying that the merger itself, them splitting up to begin with, was the big mistake. Merging it, you can't put it back together once it's broke at that point. That's what I think the problem was. And that being said, though, I don't think
if you had competent people doing it,
maybe
therein lies the problem.
You're probably right about that, but my point is that just the fact of that the dire straits that they're in right now. I don't think either you or I, knowing what we know, would have ever believed in a just as like the same thing with Tom Rothman, right? Like, we go back and tell ourselves that in 5 years from now, Paramount is going to be to the point where nobody's going to want to buy them, or they can't even get an offer that's worth a shit because they're not worth anything anymore. And even if their properties are worth more than the studio itself is. And on the other end, you got Sony, where Tom Rothman is the greatest thing that ever happened to them. We'd fucking laugh and call ourselves liars because we couldn't believe it. I know we would. At least I would, because I would never think that Paramount would have fallen to this point. Because I always felt like Star Trek was a big deal to them, but I never felt it was like a pillar. Now, the pillars over at Paramount are things like SpongeBob and Mission Impossible and Transformers, and Ninja Turtles should be another one that's a pillar, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like, they had things going for them even then that was like, I couldn't believe that, they were going to fail. I mean, look, they even had Top Gun 2 a couple years back, right? Which was one of the biggest movies we'd had in forever.
Which incidentally was also Skydance, but a fluke.
And you're right. And I said that too. Yeah. And that's what I kept standing by people. And I was right about Mission Impossible thing, where I'm like, don't be so sure that Tom Cruise is the driving force behind Top Gun. I think the nostalgia and the fact that people just haven't had a movie like that to rally around in so long had more to do with that than anything else. But that being said, let's keep moving on here because we got a lot of super chats. Dark King, and it's a good thing to have a problem like that. Thank you so much, guys. You're being generous today, and we appreciate it. Dark King sends in $2 Australian and says, we need Tom Nan, the Barbarian, to join Bad Tom.
That'd be fun.
Conan the Barbarian, yes. A Tipping Barn says, who is the masked stranger? Hi-ho, silver away. Yes. Felix P sends in $2 and says, is Backish fired a good thing for Paramount? Well, we've already discussed most of this, but I don't think it really matters at this point, right, Andre? The time to fire him would have been
a better thing if it had happened 5 years ago.
10 years ago. Yeah. Because even Moonves being out didn't really help CBS or anything, right? So
it happened too late. Because Moonves, he was also great for many, many years there. He did a lot of good for CBS. but unfortunately, he was the wrong person to manage it in the era of streaming, because he got them into streaming, and he absolutely hated sci-fi. And so he's, in many ways, he's like Tom Rothman, only he never got the chance to learn any lessons. All the stuff that he should have learned just from looking at Tom Rothman, he just repeated all of Rothman's mistakes with Star Trek.
Yeah. And then we got Dark King. We got this one already. Action Com here, who says, I plan on, he's going to time travel. Well, you can go back and tell us this about all this.
Yeah.
Should I wait a year or two so I can tell people?
If you're ever successful, come back now.
Yeah.
Damn, he failed. Okay.
Yeah. So that I can tell people of the past that I saw Hollywood die. Hollywood will never die. It'll just change. And I think we're maybe at one of those points, because it has been a long time since we've had one. The two major points in history of film where there was change, other than the obvious like sound, and stuff like that, was when the Hollywood moguls died out and they sold all the studios off. And that would have been in the late 60s, early 70s. And that's what brought us into the Renaissance, of the Spielberg, Scorsese, Lucas era type time, which played out through the 80s into the 90s, which then again in the 90s, in the mid 90s, we had this second kind of smaller shift. And that's when we had a bunch of independents. And that was probably the most lucrative time in history for movies. And I've been thinking about this too, Andre, and I'm not going to drag this out, but there's probably a video in this somewhere where in the 90s, with everything going on, I don't think you made more money than you did in Hollywood, because you had movies that were costing $3-4 million and making $19 million at the box office, $20 million at the box office.
Hollywood and TV, the 90s and early 2000s.
And then that's not even getting to the video and cable and network sales, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, a perfect example I was looking at, because I was just looking up House Party. That movie came out in 1990. It was produced by New Line Cinema, who was a mini major, and they were still considered an independent at that time, right? This is the same year they produced Ninja Turtles, which became the highest grossing independent film of all time until Blair Witch Project 8 years later, or whatever it was. Just the money alone that they raked in on a movie like House Party is fucking sane. And especially if you do the inflation calculations on this shit.
Yeah. And
they're making so much more money then than they are now.
Brought that golden age to an age.
That's exactly the point. And they've done that in the last 10 years. So they're going to have to reinvent themselves somehow coming out of this bullshit. And I think they thought it was streaming, and I don't think that's it.
Oh, no, far from it. That was the worst thing they could have done.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on, we got Matthew W. who sends in 5, says, this is Iger's end, just like the end of the Eisner era, more direct-to-video specials one after the another. Well, here's the difference, though. Eisner was making money hand over fist with those. That kind of goes off my last point, is that era was so fucking lucrative that they could throw out Little Mermaid 2 straight to video, and it actually made money. It made money. All those did, or they wouldn't have stopped. They made how many dozens of those things? You had like 3 Little Mermaids, 3 Cinderellas, 4 or 5 101 Dalmatian.
They were very profitable. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because they just sold hand over fist.
They weren't good.
I just think with these eras, it's like, yes, it's not so much you're going to see a regression or whatever. It's just, it's going to change in the way of what they have to deliver. Just like I think, Hollywood isn't going anywhere. Disney isn't going anywhere. But what Disney is in 20, 30, 40, 50 years can be categorically different than what it is today.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. They got to find a way out of this. They're not going to disappear, but they got to find a new way to play the game, basically. I agree with you 100% on that.
Yep.
And then Chaos Sonic 1 says the Infinity Stone's not important via Loki yet. The show, what if undid that with Infinity Ultron? What a load of BS on that, because it's stupid. Okay, I'm trying to...
Things, yeah.
Did you watch? Did you guys watch Loki?
I did. I watched both seasons of it, and I've also seen the first season of What If, so I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
In the super chat. But Andrew, you had a question or comment about about Loki?
No. I didn't know it all. I frankly, once again, this is one of my problems with the newer stuff. My serious problems with any of the newer things is that they require so much required reading. And like, for example, I don't want to have to go watch all of Loki in order to get a movie. I mean, it's just something I'm not doing.
Yeah, and I will say this about Loki, that the Loki series is probably the least bad of the Disney Plus Marvel shows, and it's still pretty freaking pretentious and bad, and it's just sci-fi fantasy whacked out of your mind gobbledygook. That's what it is.
Sure.
It's not, it's the wrong series for Loki.
Yeah, just still don't want to do any required reading.
And what the Chaos Sonic is referring to here is the What If series with Ultron, who basically becomes like a new super duper being. It's completely ridiculous.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And then moving on here, we've got Staccato DTS, who gifted 10. Holy crap. 10 Midnight's Edge memberships. And hopefully this week we'll be getting to that, because as you heard earlier in the show, Andre's been jet setting everywhere, all over the place, busy, and that's why he hasn't even been here in the last few shows. So yeah, that's unfortunately one of the main reasons why we haven't got to our member stream yet, but we do plan to.
We're due for another one this weekend anyway, so
yeah. We got to do double time on this one.
Yeah,
so yeah,
we have to.
I was going to remind you of that afterwards, but you're clearly
I'm aware.
Clearly aware. Then Vengeful Dragon with the garlic bread expert sends in 14 South African rands. It says, "Rip Paramount, Skydance enjoy bankruptcy." Yeah, I don't see this as a good move for both companies.
They both need new management.
Honestly, they deserve each other, I think, is what Vengeful Dragon's saying here.
We're the ones who are going to suffer with it.
You know what? In a way, maybe not, because if they do implode, then that means they'll just have to sell off those IPs anyway, and maybe they'll land somewhere halfway decent. We'll see. Accident Seller sends in 20 Norwegian krone and says, "I'm a Gen Xer and I never seen a lot of movies." Paul mentioned, we got this one already, but thank you again.
Yeah, and that once again, yeah, he was talking about film students specifically.
Yeah. Chuck Henry is here. How you doing, Chuck Henry? And has been a member for 18 months. Holy crap. Shadow Dance from Red Main.
I just got like some rumors behind the scenes here that the Skydance merge will go through. This is just a rumor so far, but Skydance will go through. Kurtzman is going to get renewed for another 5 years, and more Trek movies will be coming. So whoever said, well, things can't get worse for Star Trek. Oh, yeah, they just did.
Well, and that's kind of in line with what I've been trying to warn people about this whole situation, too.
So, you can kiss Star Trek every bit as goodbye as you can.
And that's what I've been worried since Kurtzman hadn't jumped ship yet.
Yeah, so there's no reason for happiness here. And maybe that's going to be something that they announce in a couple of hours here, that it has gone through. If that happens, and we're going to clip this, you heard it here first at Midnight's Edge, 2 hours before the earnings call.
And I'll tell you something else. This is why, even though we kind of joked about it a little bit, I didn't really dwell on this Star Trek 4 announcement, because I actually kind of believe this one might actually happen.
Me too.
I don't know what form it will be in, but I do believe we will get
a sucky one.
Some sort of either Alex Kurtzman / J.J. Abrams / Skydance / whatever Star Trek movie at some point here in the next year or two.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Joey,
why are we always the bearer of bad news?
Yeah, Joey, for those who are only listening, says, "Wow, Andre, push the audience's head underwater and keep it pinned there. Can't get any worse than this." You're doing it again. Dude, it can always get worse.
You could die. That would be worse, Joey.
There's.
And in terms of Star Trek, it can be so that we wish it would have died. I mean, okay, let's just say that this is true. Kurtzman stays another 5 years. J.J. Abrams is back for more movies, and he's bringing Zack Snyder with him. So, it can always.
Don't even give him ideas on that, man. Like, he does not need a boost right now. Shadow Dancer, the Red Mage, has been a member for 19 months. Speaking of a boost, all our members always give us a boost here. says, wasn't Ursula originally based on Divine, the drag queen? Yes. Yes. But mostly in appearance and just that kind of a thing. But yeah. Chaos Sonic 1 says with 5, all the coding is going to backfire as they are fictional characters, and all it is going to do is make people want to stay away from these people.
Well, and one thing I think we've talked about, and this is the big one, and I deal with this, talking to folks about, anime versus Hollywood or the East versus West, is, people have forgotten about escapism and not wanting to see these things constantly thrust when that there's a political intent behind them, there's an agenda intent behind them. So yeah, it's going to backfire. I think it's going to backfire big time, because it's just driving people away and away and away from it, and it's driving it into relative irrelevancy. So yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah. And maybe this is one you could chime in on a bit. Accident Seller sends in 50 Norwegian Krona, says, that's hilarious. We complain that they don't make movies for boys anymore, and there came a guy who made a movie for his kid, and it almost ruined Paramount. Well, there's a difference between... Go ahead, Andrew. I want to hear your take on this. You didn't know about it before we told you. I loved your reaction.
No, this is a legend that I'm learning about tonight. But there's a difference between making something that is that you workshop with a team that's saying, okay, we're trying to market to teenage boys. How do we do this? Because that's verboten now, despite the fact that, by the way, in anime and manga, right, you have very specific categories, like shonen, for example, is intended to be marketed to boys. There's specific intentional marketing. Now, that does not mean that a secondary market for women can't exist. Women can still like a shonen manga, but it's not intended. The primary market is not intended to be women. So, I mean, it's created intentionally in a certain way. And then going to a child and saying, hey, does this seem like a good idea? That's a categorically different thing, right? Is saying, oh, the kid thought it was all right, and therefore I think it's cool. But to be honest, guys, it's really a metaphor for Hollywood. The children are in charge now. I mean, is that not true? It's a bunch of
100%.
children and adult children that are running the asylum, and it shows.
No, and you're 100% right. Yeah, this fucking movie. And I never seen the damn thing, so it might even be enjoyable for younger kids, but
well, yeah, it might be if you're 4. And
that's my point.
This article from GQ even wonders, how the hell could this happen? And then they gradually get into the story of, this is how it happened.
And Andrew, you went exactly where I was going to go anyway. So I'm like, 4-year-olds come in during the focus group section, not the development section.
Right. And that's fine. And if you want it, you're doing different markets and you're like, wow, this is really killing it with the 4-year-olds. That's great. Right. Whatever, that might work. That
Andrew, you have the keywords there. The 4-year-olds. In a focus group, you have multiple. You have to have multiple, because if you ask just one, you may have an atypical one. I mean, at 4, they can like all kinds of weird stuff. They don't have to be into the same thing. That's the one thing that this executive didn't do. He didn't ask a wide variety of 4-year-olds. He asked one 4-year-old, his 4-year-old. And then he proceeded to pump $200 million into a movie that needed a 4-quadrant audience to succeed.
Yeah, that's
if he had spent 30 million,
if he had spent like $10 million or 15-20 million on something for a 4-year-old audience, that would be a different matter. But this is a $200 million 4-quadrant blockbuster, which means it needed to attract male and female audiences over and under the age of 25.
Well,
that's who it needed to attract, everyone. And it was based on the whims of one 4-year-old. You can see the picture right here to get like an idea. It's like a squid shark monster in the truck of a car. That's really kind of what it is.
Well, I'll bring up a perfect example. Here's something that actually had a following at the time the movie was made, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that movie only got the funding it did on a New Line, and I've told this story before because it's in our interview with Bob Shea. I suggest you check it out. He's like, Ninja Turtles, is this even popular? What is this? And Sarah Risher, the secretary in the office or whatever, she's one of the head people now, was then, I think at that point, or getting there. Either way, point being, she goes, "Oh yeah, I bought all the toys for my kid for Christmas. He loves it. All the kids at school love it, that kind of thing." It's like, "Oh, give him $6 million. Like, that's different, right? Like,
Yeah.
throw $6 million at something and it pays off. That's big jackpot. Cool. But you're, like Andre said, you're expecting that move. Now that'd been different if he'd been like, okay, give him $200 million. Right? Like, no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway,
if it was like
Yeah,
a small
found,
gamble, it's one thing, but yeah, that's a whole different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I found another headline right here which illustrates it pretty well.
Oh, 115 million loss. Ouch.
Wow.
You know, and it's sad because if it would have been properly done, I'm not saying this was a bad idea. It just felt like a 4-year-old put it together. That was the problem. But anyway. And then there's even some people in the chat who said they enjoyed it. So I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Well, but it can turn into something like The Room, right? Like
here you have the trailer for it. Actually,
it's The Room, but with monster truck.
Have to be careful so we don't get nailed here.
Now, if Tommy Wiseau would have made this movie, it would have been a masterpiece. I love you, monster truck.
Yeah,
You're my best friend.
Yeah, that's kind of right. Yeah, like the shark monster peeing on his friend, and yeah, good stuff.
God.
Good
because you could have made toys and stuff out of this. I could see the potential.
They didn't.
No, it was a poorly executed.
And merch is how you make the money. I mean, that's really
Absolutely.
tell that to Disney, and
that's why Ninja Turtles is such a big deal, Andrew, right? Because it's not so much the movies or the shows, it's the merchandising.
I had a lunchbox. I had all the stickers. I had everything when I was growing up. I had all that stuff. And like, where is that gone? Like, you're not selling lunchboxes to kids. I mean, you're not even really supporting kids, in a general sense. So, yeah, no, I can see where it's really fallen off. Guys, I do have to run in.
Thank you, Andrew, for being here, man. It's been way too fucking long. We appreciate you coming in here, man. And we love your takes, and we love hearing your your expertise on these things. And you were right about Reedy Creek. I will never let anybody forget that.
Never.
No, neither will I.
I'm not going to let anybody forget that. And also, like, the interesting thing is here too is I said right away, like, they're going to have to do one or two things. They're going to have to settle, or there's going to be criminal stuff. And it's interesting to see that now they've backed down off of that. And I think it's specifically because they knew that was coming. So the timing is very, very, very interesting for Disney. So we'll see what Disney does with it. I mean, once again, to me, this was a bullet dodged, a literal headshot that was dodged by them in getting into the settlement. But we're going to see what they do with that. My thought is it's going to be exactly the same as Nelson Peltz. They're going to take what they had in momentum and they're going to squander it. And don't put it past Bob Iger during this next election cycle, particularly as we get towards November, for things to go even worse for the Walt Disney Corporation and for them to get themselves in more trouble. I don't discount, don't sleep on old Bob, two-shower Bob, from getting dirty again. So I'm still here for it, still covering anything that comes up, and obviously I'll be around for Carano or any other lawsuits that may come up in the pop culture world. And anytime you guys want me on and I can make it with my time schedule permitting, I am happy to join you guys.
Of course, awesome. Anytime you can. Yeah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
Take care.
All right. Let's get back into the super chats here, Andre. We've got Pablo Papano in the house. How you been? Sends in $2. Says Mickey anal beads next. Oh, don't give him ideas. I'm surprised they haven't got them already.
No, that's only for a pride celebration when it's part is closed for regular people.
DCB Titan sends in a Canadian 5 and says, was the poison apple given to Snow White an Adam's apple? Oh my. Sure would change some things. Yeah, that's funny. But not funny because it's so real. ActionCom asks us to define due process. Yeah, no shit in this day and age. I get the joke.
Oh, we should have gotten this one but Tommy, want to have a crack at it?
Well, I mean, I think he's being sarcastic, but yeah, due process is the actual legal oh God, now I'm drawing a blank on how to explain this here.
Well, Yeah, I haven't looked it up, but basically it's that you follow the
Actual procedure.
yeah, you follow the law of the land and the procedures which are defined, even when it's someone that you hate, and even when the public opinion wants a certain thing, and you do that so that you avoid errors in judgment. And I don't remember the English word. Like, I'm looking for the English word for justismord, which is basically what we call it, like murder of justice. That's the Norwegian term for it. That's what you want to avoid, and we have that in Norway every once in a while. I mean, we have like a big one of someone who was like 20 years in jail. He was guilty as hell of other things, but he may not have been guilty of that one particular thing that he was found guilty for, and that's because the entire public opinion wanted to see someone hang, and just may have wanted it a little bit too much. And you have the same thing with other high-profile cases.
Oh, look at Alec Baldwin is a more recent example.
Everywhere, where the opinion wants one thing because you want revenge, you want satisfaction.
Well, as I was just saying, Alec Baldwin's a good example of more recent years.
Exactly. People want to because they hate him, and I don't blame. Like, I don't like Alec Baldwin as an individual, but here's the fact of the matter is that if it was someone else holding that gun, the same thing would have happened. He wasn't supposed to check it. That's not his job. I mean, that's what you do on a gun range. That's what you do with a live weapon. It's not what you do on a set. If you were to follow the laws that or the rules that apply with an actual live gun, always check that it's live and stuff like that, they would have to cut and reset the scene and have the armor come in all over again, and they would never be able to get anything done.
Well,
because different rules apply.
And even though there was a lot of hot emotional takes about it, and even some disagreements on our own panel when it was first come out,
absolutely,
as I said early on, the thing is to look at this. This is something that's unprecedented. We'd never had anything like this before. The closest thing was The Crow, and from the people that we had talked to that actually knew people that were involved in the situation, I guess, or close to the situation, let's say, where they had flat out said to me, and I understood where they had come from, where the armorist was going to be the person who was probably the most liable. Now, Alex still has his day in court, but we'll see how that rolls out. I have a feeling they're going to go after him more as a producer than they are an actor. That's just my personal
that's
opinion.
the correct thing to do, because he's the one that hired an armorer who clearly wasn't up for the job.
Yep. And that's the thing. And everything that individual and another individual kind of said about this armorist kind of came out in court. So, yeah, as I kind of tried to point out to people, that this person was not really qualified for the job. So if you want to hold him responsible for that, if he was the actual person who hired her, then yes. But that's probably what his court case is probably going to be more about. So we'll see. But again, due process, right? I mean, we'll have to wait and see how it pans out for him in court. And hopefully he has a actual fair case, because like Andre said, if it comes out later down the road that things were he's being railroaded, we could wind up with another Weinstein situation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
never do things while too angry, because you might make decisions you're going to regret later on. But moving on.
Yes, indeed. Shadow Dancer the Red Mage also sends us in a $5 super chat. Thank you for the support. It says the Salem witch trials continued until the finger was pointed in the wrong direction. Well, and that kind of goes right along with what we're saying here, right? Nobody cares about due process until they're the ones who need it, right? So yeah. Eldritch the Lord Hoster has been a member for 21 months. He's also a frequenter over on Mead Radio. Thank you for being here. Pilgrim Media sent in $2. Says Kaiser Soze, LA Confidential. Yeah. Some Kevin Spacey references there. Horseradish Power. Go ahead.
And Kaiser reference as well.
Yes, yeah, tying it all together. Horseradish Power sends in £2. It says Duke comes from the Latin dux, means leader.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Vengeful Dragon comes in with another 14 South African rands and says, quick, someone me too, David Ellison rip Star Trek. Well, unless he's actually guilty of something, I wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I mean, we have seen too many things have been victimized by people being politically Me Too'd. So I get the joke, but Let's rather hope that that someone else wakes up and decides that, dude, you can be a mogul if you want, but fucking hire good people.
Right.
That would solve everything. Hire someone to do the job for you. Sit back, claim credit, but then hire someone else to actually come up with a vision and run the company. Someone who knows what they're doing, and Ellison clearly does not.
No. Yeah, he's just spending daddy's money. Future Boy is here and sends in $2, says mission guaranteed. You know he's gonna win. Well, what to see. Tom Cruise, maybe. He's just got to hope that, if that's what you're talking about, because he's got to hope that next Mission Impossible movie plays.
And I like the previous one. I look forward to the next one.
Actually watched it again this weekend, Andre, and my opinion of it went down.
Yeah.
I found it much more tedious and boring, and the movie should have ended at about an hour and 45 minutes in, setting up the next movie.
Yeah,
the movie goes on for an hour too long. And all the action shit's in the last half of the movie anyway, so that's the other problem. So, like, yeah.
Another rewrite, you're saying?
Yes. It's watching it again now, because the first time I saw it, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's like just about like all the other Mission films. I wouldn't put it up there with the best of them, but I'd put it in about the middle. Now I'm putting it down near the bottom of the list after watching it again this weekend for the first time since I saw it. But the Future Boy also sends in 5 and says, George Miller, writer, director of Mad Max universe. I have full faith in him. I'm fucking stoked for Furiosa. George fucking Miller will not disappoint. Well, hopefully you enjoy it. I was not a fan of Fury Road. And I'm not looking forward to this myself personally, but yeah. Action Com says, legal ever see. Oh shit, I fucking missed this. Action Com. I did not see this one. I'm so sorry, but I will actually send this to him. So maybe he will see it then. So yes, I'm screenshotting it and sending it to him now. And then go ahead and read this one, Andre, if you will.
Yeah, certainly. Packing Proton says for $10, about an hour behind. Oh, well, greetings from the future. I saw the first super chat. Did you see the TMNT one? Also, love the stream because I learned things. Now I know about Kaiser. Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah, if you mean like that, some TMNT super chat, yeah, I'm sure we must have by
we
now.
did, and we got into the Paramount conversation with it, and then yeah, I didn't get into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff too much, but I just said like what I've been saying for a while, and that is Last Ronin needs to be done live action, done right, with basically a spin-off of the 1990 film. And if they do that and that works for them as an R-rated film, then that opens the door for possibly more adult-oriented Ninja Turtles. And then he sends in a $10 super chat again and said, I just saw you got the other one. Yes. Also for the lawyer. Oh, now I just saw it. Lawyer Man. What anime would you recommend these days? Vermeil in Gold isn't bad. Like Porky's meets Harry Potter meets Pokemon, raunchy but fun. I wouldn't even know how to wrap my head around those combos.
That sounds fun.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying, like, I'm just trying to picture that in my head.
No, that can only be done in anime. I can tell that right away.
I guess so. But I did send that to him as well. So hopefully we can get back to you on that. We got Mikey sending in another 10 and says, I am excited for Kurtzman extension. So that those wackos that liked Picard season 3 get what they deserve for supporting that. No low light bulb, crappy ass filmed memberberry crap shit show. Well, to remember, Mike, the only reason I get what you're saying, but Picard season 3 happened despite Kurtzman. That's the thing I wish people would understand. It happened because he was too busy fucking around with Clarice.
That's exactly right. I mean, that was the anti-Kurtzman season by someone who will not be invited back to Star Trek because he did better than Kurtzman, and Kurtzman doesn't like him very much, and vice versa. So, yeah. As far as I know.
Yeah. But I understand some people just didn't care for it. I only got like a couple episodes in. I'm like, this is like one of the TNG movies. Okay.
I loved it. Just too bad about everything else surrounding it, so it doesn't really help.
Yeah. Vengeful Dragon says, SH make a Trek for kids. Kids hate it, and bots got Netflix to save it. Secret Hideout, make a Trek for kids. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's talking about the
City thing or
Paramount.
whatever.
Yeah, the I'm trying to remember the show's name.
Prodigy.
Prodigy. Yeah, it didn't do that well. But I heard that was actually one of the better shows, sadly.
Yeah, that says everything about the rest. Kind of like we also heard about Masters of the Universe, right? How that similar 3D animated thing was the best thing, but that only goes to show how bad
everything
the
else
real thing was ended up being. Real thing
Yeah.
being Revelation.
And then Kitty Bear says Disney male evil queen. Isn't that ironic? I know, right? And then we got 70s Rock fan who's been here for 36 months. Thank you for being here. And that's 3 years, I believe, if my math is correct. Then we got Jesus Davila sending in a thumbs up, reminding us if you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, please do. And with that, that brings us up to speed on the super chats. So
fantastic.
With that,
do
I
we
think
have any
Andre,
Rumble rant?
Let me double check. I don't think we do, though. I just checked here a little bit ago.
Okay, excellent. So we don't miss anything behind, because
nope.
hate doing that if it can be avoided.
No, I've been keeping an eye on that because we missed it the last time, and that really bothered me. So yes, no, we're good there. And we will be on, sounds like later on today in just about 2.5 hours or so, roughly.
1.5 hours.
Or 1.5 hours, yeah, because it's Eastern time. You're right. Over on Valiant Renegades channel. So hopefully we see you guys there. And we got Packing Proton sending in one more $10 super chat and says Star Trek Prodigy was the only fun things to come out at Kurtzman era Trek because TMNT 2K3 team was behind it. I think hope season 2 is good. Yeah, I was just going to say that actually, Protons. It's funny you mentioned that. I was going to say, didn't a different team work on that than Kurtzman's normal team anyway?
Everything that is good in any way, shape, or form is made by someone other than Kurtzman's regular team. This is a very, very simple thing. I mean, just look at Picard season 3. If it gets any kind of good word of mouth, no matter how little, it wasn't Kurtzman.
What's funny is I didn't care for Lower Decks because I felt it was beneath Trek. But I've talked to some people who've enjoyed it, and the reason they enjoyed it is because they're like, well, I like all the Trek references and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, I was thinking back to the actual panel where the funny thing about it was when we went to Star Trek convention, like every panel was packed, right? Even some of the Discovery ones were pretty full. As soon as they announced that the Lower Decks panel was next, the entire room cleared out. Right. And just to let you know, like normally there was people lined up all the way around the room, going out the room to ask questions, and they would only get to a few usually. We had no problems getting in there, getting questions answered by the Lower Deck crew. But at least I could tell one thing by a lot of the things they were saying was that they were actually kind of fans of this stuff. So I think I even said then, you can go back and check if you want. Where I think I even said then, I said, if anything, this show might turn out to be somewhat okay, or at least with some of the fans, because they understand Star Trek, or at least there's Trek fans, it sounds like. But again, it was another crew that wasn't Kurtzman's normal crew of people, and Kurtzman didn't have a stank all over it. Yeah.
I mean, same thing with Strange Worlds.
Because that's what we even asked them was how they were going to refer to back to things. Was it going to be classic Trek or the new JJ Trek? And I think one of their answer to that was basically, it was, oh yeah, everything's going to be referred to as far as Star Trek goes. So yeah. You were going to say something, Andre. I'm sorry.
No. All I was gonna. Now I said it. So just let's move on.
That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah. All right.
We're at the 3-hour mark, so we managed to still.
Yeah. Not that we tried. It just kind of like ended up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so check back for Valiant Renegades stream afterwards, and then I believe we have Toxic Femininity. Do we not, Tom?
Should. I think so. I have to double check with the ladies, but yeah, we should have.
And then we will have a regular video dropping tomorrow. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Should be fun. And with that, Tom, is there anything else we need to plug? Other than, of course, the guests, who you will find linked in the description. Be sure to check them out.
I don't know if it's still up or not, but we had a pretty successful flashcast on Midnight's Edge this last Saturday night.
Oh, it's still up.
Some really lively conversation and interesting, deep conversation about race relations and entertainment and stuff like that. And yeah, it was a very interesting panel, I thought.
Yeah.
So if that's still up, check that out. If not, that'll be dropping on Live Archive.
Still up.
So there you go.
Clips will also be remerging on Live Archives now when I'm back again. So yeah, good times. And with that, as it was said here, no tricks given. So with that, it is time for some koalas in the rain.
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koala, koala, koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koala, koala, koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain.
Miguel Farah sends us in 1,000 Chilean pesos. I believe singing the same song in Spanish. Correct. Excuse me.
Latin. Koalas sub pluvia. I understand that. That's koalas under the rain. Null. That's 0. It's fantastic. 0 fornications given. So yeah, that's.
I understood that word,
fornications.
fornications.
Yeah, exactly. That's. I love Latin because it's so cool to see its influence in modern day Spanish, Italian, and of course all other languages. Oh, anyway, so with that, take care.